of early empires and political dynasties. Our first panelist and chair, Professor Anand Singh, Head of the Department of Historical Studies and Archaeology at Central University of South Bihar in Gaya. Professor Singh brings a wealth of experience, having taught at esteemed institutions such as Nalanda International University, Baba Saheb Bhimrao Ambedkar University, Lucknow, and Gautam Budh University in Noida. In addition to his distinguished teaching career, Professor Singh has successfully completed numerous research projects funded by the organizations like the Indian Council of Historical Research, New Delhi. He is also a prolific author with several books to his credit, including his latest publication, Nalanda, A Glorious Past. May we have you on the stage, please?
Our second panelist, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Sangya Pandey is an assistant professor at Amity University, Patna. Dr. Pandey holds a PhD and MPhil from Jawaharlal Nehru University and has expertise in diverse fields, including history, gender issues, cultural studies, and international relations. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sangya Pandey to the dais. Dr. Toshabanta Pradhan, a distinguished faculty member at Nalanda University, is our next panelist. Dr. Pradhan holds a PhD in archaeology from Deccan College, Pune, and has undertaken postdoctoral research at esteemed institutions including IIT Gandhinagar, Flinders University in Australia, and second postdoctoral from Indian Institute of Science Education and Research, Mohali, and Tel Aviv University. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Pradhan to the dais.
Good afternoon, everyone. And before beginning the session, showing my sincere gratitude for invitation felicitated by Bihar Regiment and senior officers of the regiment. I am chairing the session, but also I am also a panelist, so I will discuss that earliest formation of capital of Magadh Mahajanpad and beginning of a defense mechanism, and my two co-panelists, Dr. Toshabanta Pradhan will deal with archaeology of warfare, ancient military architecture and fortification of old Rajgir, South Bihar, and Dr. Sangya Pandey will discuss evolution of military power from Magadh to Kannauj. Almost 1 hour 30 minutes, so we have 25 minutes each, and after that 15 minutes for the discussion in the last. So just first I will begin my presentation. As you just see that discussing that formation of earliest capital and its defense in Magadh Mahajanpad. Basically, in 20 minutes I'm not dealing with generic, or you can say that historical or archaeological evidences that how Rajgir or Rajgraha became the first capital of the Magadh Janpad, and that finally led to the beginning of the empire and shifting of the capital. But here, basically, my presumption would be that what kind of military strategy was first kind either think or borrowed or institutionalized that became foundation of the Indian military system. So the paper is and it is also, you can say, not only the theory, but many of the challenges that we are facing, that also just will come into that kind of debate. That so if you see it, it's a Rajgir hill where the formation of first capital that you can see that Rajgraha started taking shape, and you see that 5 major hills you will see, and it's supported from the 2 ends by 2 river channels. One is from the Banganga and other side is the Panchang. So the very first thing that was taken into account, that if you have to establish a military cantonment, the first thing that you require is the water. So how your fortification and your habitation will start taking shape, both for military and for the civic system. So you need a particular geographical setup, a particular landscape in which you need 4-5 things. That first you have to settle, not only for your defense, but for your administration, for other causes and for the general masses. Then the second important thing, that you have a suitable supply and transport system for that. First is water and other food, etc. Third is that if it is going to be a military establishment, then what should be the strategy you will chalk out to just making this defense considered to be the best. And the system that we found, it's most accepted fortification that we found, that is prepared by A. Ghosh in the Rajgir, in which he discussed that 2 level of fortification that was established. That is one you call outer, and the second is called the inner. Outer, he told, that is considered to be the most authentic, that the whole city was surrounded by this wall, and it was approximately 9 miles, he says. But one of the most distinguished scholar whose theory is acceptable is Professor Devala Mitra, who just mapped all these walls, and she's just said that we accepted to all that this peripheral boundary was around 45 kilometers in circumference, outer wall. When you look into that, finally, this is one of the remains of the wall that you found. When you look into it, that how, if this Mahajanpad has the ambition to be the great or greatest, then what kind of a military strategy it will evolve, and how they can just get help. So the first very important thing that came into this mind is that the army. I'm just taking here army sincerely means that only infantry. That how you will just take into account is it a kind of mercenary that you are talking about, or you should a certain mechanized system? And so we found it that around 6th century BCE there was a brainstorming over that the earliest kind of mercenary approach to the military that we found in our Mahakavyas like Ramayana, what you found like in the Mahabharata you found, is not going to be a practical aspect. You have to develop an empire. So Bimbisar first time started recruiting the army that directly owned by state. So in India he is considered to be the first king who just institutionalized that there should be the state army, there should be the permanent army base, and it should be directly owned. Definitely it has its own system. that how you can just pay these personals, what kind of a strategy you want to protect these persons. Certain things were just added, like just say that, and it is evolved and finally it gets institutionalized in the age of Kautilya. So evolution started here. Second important thing that he just says that why, how you can just settle and what kind of a strategy you will evolve to just protect this your state. Because when you talk about this area, it is considered to be impregnable. And we found its architect, it is known as Mahagovind, and Bimbisar himself mentioned somewhere that its security was impregnable. Like once there is a sunset law that after sunset if you want to enter into the city it is impossible, and once during hunting expedition he forget the route and finally reached late and he was not allowed to enter into. So how this city was managed, just you found that there are these are the walls, and in the walls you see there are bastions, and 18 such kind of bastions are known. And these are just reconstructed by archaeology department, but you find it that this is in the southern range, the only one bastion that is still is in the original shape. It is almost inaccessible, and so you found it that you will find it, and it is almost on the frontier of the just Gaya road. So finally you just found that how inaccessible in character. It is very difficult to just reach there. How you can just to enter to cross that? So there is some kind of gates. Basically 7 are just in the latter traditions mentioned that 24 important gates and 64 smaller gates. One of that such entrances just you see that is mentioned here, and almost it says that 24 such entrances well protected by bastions and military is there. Now come to how this kind of the city basically just started, military just started taking shape in that. So very first thing that Kautilya later on discussed in that food and supply is the very important things when you talk about the military. If supply line is not clear, then basically it's very difficult that you have to protect. And when this wall, if you accept it, the general theory is around the 6th century BCE. We have the literary records of late 5th century BCE and 4th century BCE of the military configurations of all 6 limbs of the army, that is infantry, cavalry, elephant corps, navy, supply line and chariot. So in the late 5th century BCE, we found it that it is Nandas have around 3 lakh, in which that 2 lakh army persons were there. So if we talk about that to around 6th century, so we found in the Magad Janpat probably Bimbisar have around 80 to 1 lakh army personals. And if 1 lakh army personals, then the center or capital is the most protected. Definitely 30 to 40,000 army personals along with civilians probably resided in the Rajgir in the 6th century BC. So question is still hill city, where is the food? Where is the supply line? You can arrange the wheat or paddy etc. But daily necessities, vegetable, milk, butter like things. So first time, a very unique that I have well discussed in my new work, Nalanda, A Glorious Past, a concept was taken that we have to evolve a satellite channel that can be a base of your supply line. And for that, Nalanda was established basically as a satellite channel to provide the supply line for the military as well as administrative establishment of the Rajgir. I am not telling it. All important sources, majority Jainism mentions that Nalanda was Bahirika. The term is mentioned for Nalanda is Bahirika, outskirt. So outskirt of what? Outskirt of Rajgir. It is a plain land and it is well connected to the northern route, means Uttar Path that you find it. So the question was why this term is repeated and with emphatically, and it is very prosperous. It was mentioned, it is very, the Sethis, the merchants of this region are very prosperous, the agriculture of this region is prosperous. Why this word is echoing frequently? So probably it was basically when a state was planned about their army, a standing army first time came into existence, they were first thought that where is the food? Because in special circumstances, if supply line is cut off, you are defeated. It's a very thing. And so they have first thought that how this kind of things will come into the picture. And so they have first time constituted the idea. And it was found in the Kautilya's Arthashastra when he just finally established that sixth organ of the army, and the most emphatic element he has just given is that your supply line, your transportation should be the best thing. Other important thing is that army personnel, then what kind of that the nature of an army that you have to cut? This simply you are hiring a mercenary and come and just having the sword and all? No. Bimbisar just deflected from the idea that army personnel mind should be for the war or it just should maintain the peace. It is not only the war. The idea was given to avoid war, and in case when peace is going to be just disturbed, they have to wage the war. Then the question is, they have to be psychologically trained, and the first thing that what kind of psychological training is that you cannot leave weaponry in the hand of that soldiers, that you should maintain your own weaponry. It happened after 7th century, when feudal army came, that you come with your horses and do aspa, see aspa, you come with your weapon. Bimbisar was the first who says that state will manage, in the Rajgir, state will manage your weapon, your food and dresses. Your work is to fight. So very first thing is that they have to carry the weapon. So very important, and we find in his son's just idea that you find it. So a very important thing that he has just mentioned, that how you will set up the army, what kind of things you will expect from the army personnel, and what army personnel can expect from you. And you find in the Kautilyas that they should be one of the highest paid. And you see it that the chief commander's salary, we found that Mahamatra's salary, it is officially mentioned, was more than the salary of the British governor in the colonial time. So you would find it that how they were economically protected for that. So this is very important thing. Another thing, during my wandering in the hills of Rajgir, I just found one very specific structure that this one, and this was near the last bastion that is mentioned in the southern region. Popularly, this area is very popular. It is on very steep hill, and we call it Bhamkava, or it is called Bhimkaya. So the local myth is there that when Pandavas come to fight with the Jarasandha, Bhim came and just sleep here, and just because of that, this cave is known as Bhamkaya, Bhimkaya. And when I just climbed to that cave, actually it is not a cave. This is a hole. It is always initially a natural, but some chiseling is there, so it is man-made. This hole is a very larger one and directly it is connected to the last bastion of the empire. So the question is that why, and it is very sacred. It is, you cannot see it if you cannot climb it. So probably what I thought, basically it was used by either soldiers or the spies of the empire when for the night surveillance or any kind of surveillance, but because if wall is finally, all the gates are closed, the sepoys can just enter from this cave and come to the Gaya side, to the plain land directly. And so, and on this cave, on the roof of this cave, you have a structure to sit. So it almost well protected. So you will find it that what kind of mechanism basically they evolved. And another point that is that come into much debate. Basically, when you talk about ancient military system, you talk about that the idea of army and all, and generally it was just considered that in the 6th century BCE, second urbanization started, and then finally iron came into existence, and then finally surplus idea came, and then finally you can say that people started assembling the army, ambition came, all India empire came. But now what you will do, because the recent researches that coming from last 10-20 years, but finally it got matured and got international acceptance. It was finally accepted that age of iron in India began around 3500 BCE, parallel to the Indus Valley civilization. In the South India, that is got mixed with ash mound as well as megalithic culture. So if you, what date you are accepting, and all of your military as well as common history is taking to the 800 BC, now it is shifted to 3500 BC, and recently you can say that Tamil Nadu Chief Minister has released a very book, and it was endorsed by all important archaeologists across the world, including Indians. So if this kind of hypothesis is coming, then the question is, what kind of things you will just dedicate to this Magad Chotta Nagpur region? Two very important minor observations, and then I will finish my just presentation here. One thing is that if we are accepting that date is preceding our Iron Age, and that simply we have to reject the idea that iron came from the northern plain of the Ganga Valley, then you have to look into the hypothesis raised by some of the early historians like R.L. Mitra, like Ghosh and all, that this military arrangement that is considered to be first organized in India cannot be dedicated to Bimbisar, but it should be preceded to Jarasandha level, maybe 1000 or more, you can say BCE. So Bimbisar almost institutionalized it, but probably it was not a first. I'm not saying, they are saying. And for that, the two very important linkages is there. Probably the tribal groups of Nagpur Plateau have some kind of knowledge of iron smelting. They are living in the Singhbhum region, and they were also connected to somehow southern migration, means the latter Harappans. So basically they have a kind of, you can say, knowledge, that is what we are establishing, what we are accepting is preceding to the phenomena. If it is going to be accepted in the future, it would be very revealing history, not only for our social political history, but also for our military history. Thank you. Now I request Dr. Tosha Banta for a presentation.
Hello, namaskar, and good afternoon to all of you. Respected and distinguished Professor Anand Singh, and obviously the brave hearts and the Bihar Regimental Center, actually like in collaborations with the United Service Institution of India. I'm really honored to have here to deliver a talk on the archaeology of the warfare. Basically, like you see that I'm an archaeologist from the Nalanda University, and my specialization is archaeology. So archaeology is a subject that deals with the study of past material culture and the human behavior. So I'll actually take you from the prehistoric time thank you, sir. So how the concept of the tools or the weapons started since the Paleolithic time period. They started like how it is. I mean to say that in the beginning, how it is started with the Stone Age. Now, if you look into the difference between like what is the tool and weapon, is basically like what the stone tool that made us human, which like makes us different from the apes. Any other species in the world, they cannot actually make tools. Only like human can only make tools. And then while like made tools was basically like it was made our job easier, but then it was like for cutting, chopping, scraping, or many other purpose that we did it. And then finally what we have seen that gradually we have also developed weapons, and that to actually attack and also to defend us, to injure or defeat maybe the enemy or the opponents. Now, if you look into this thing, all the weapons are there tools, but all the tools are not weapons. So see, it's very beautiful, like one of the philosophers say that we shape our tools and then our tools shape us. That's what we have seen throughout the human history. Now, this presentation would be like basically based on the prehistoric period. I will be covering about the Paleolithic and the Neolithic. Rise of the warfare basically started with the urbanizations. As the populations grow, we start fighting, we start competing with each other. And then basically this is all because of the social complexity that is developed in the early urban societies. We do find evidences of these forts in the case of the Harappan cities. I'll show you the pictures. Then there are many different war implements are found, whether it is the copper, bronze, iron, or maybe that is what also find in the case of other metal, which is also the stone. And then what also we see here is particularly with the introduction of the iron, the things become very sophisticated. The war become more sophisticated. There are new strategies were built up. Organized armies start coming up, particularly beginning with the historical time period. And then also, along with the iron is also what we have seen and witnessed is large-scale forts, fortifications, watchtower, moat, bastions started coming up. And then we do find even very interesting evidences of war or the weaponaries in the case of the historical literature. And then we do find use of animals in the war, whether it is the elephant, horse, donkeys, cow, or other livestock. Then we do find reference of in the history basically about the greatest war, whether it is the Mahabharata or whether it is the Kalinga war. We do find even there are archaeological records like those of the inscriptions are there. We do have also archaeological evidences of the chariots, and then also the remains of the early Magadha Empire that the previous speakers already said about the Rajgir. The Rajagriha that we find it, the Cyclopean War. Now, we generally have two things that we do it. First is the offense and also the defense. What is basically comes under the weapon for the attack is mostly the projectile weapons. And I'll say you the concept of actually the arrows along with the sling balls. Then also you have this melee weapons, then the bladed tools. Whether the defensive architecture, what we generally find is we find the forts, whether it is the wall, ditches, or the palisades, or maybe the settlements, watchtowers, or the guard post. moats, earthen mounds, hidden entrances, escape routes, caves. These are what we see. This is like the early tools that looks like which dated to about 15 lakh years. I would say that 1.5 million years, and then it continued till about 1 lakh years. Then if you come into the concept of the spearhead or the arrows, they start about 300,000 years with the Middle Paleolithic period. And these are the technology, how basically this concept of the sword, the spears or the concept of what you said, the arrowheads were started in the stone age itself. So the larger or the heavy one, basically their projectile points commonly referred as the spear, but then the smaller or the lighter one are basically those are the arrowheads or the arrow point. You can see here, gradually there is a development, and then we do find the Clovis point. Obviously, these are not found in India, but they are found in the case of the Europe, as well as the America. And then, what is the most significant part of the human history? I'd say, you can say the weapon is the fire. Because still we believe on the firepower in the Indian military, right? If you have really the firepower, you won actually. Mostly, you have the strategy. So this is what, starting along with the prehistoric time period. And then you see here, the rock paintings showing you basically using the different type of the tools, whether the arrowheads or maybe the spears, that you find it. Then gradually when you are starting coming to the Neolithic time period, I mean so that the time when we are starting the agriculture, domestication of the animals, that time we see this kind of the Neolithic tools or the Neolithic axe. We start coming up with the different kind of the mace head, points, bone points, and then gradually we start basically using it initially for the hunting and gathering purposes, as well as also for the domestic usage. Now, if you look into the Indus fortifications, we have sites like the core differences of the fortification. Then we have from the Lothal site, you have from the historical literature. What we have observed is that we have basically used many different terms for the forts. We call them Durga, we call them Kila, we call them God. So basically if any, sometimes their suffix are there, sometimes their prefix are there. For example, giving an example of Sisupal God. So it comes with the God at the end that goes back to 5,000 years back. And then look at here, this is a site called the Kali Bangal, basically the meaning is black bangles. We do find the fortifications in the case of the site, the Kali Bangal site. So they are enclosed by the fortification wall, as well as also they have gateways or basically the closed gateways of the very strict entry into the site. And then we have seen another site called the Dholanda. It's basically a World Heritage site located in the Kutch region of Gujarat. And here you can see the large, the fortification wall that was started in the case of the Harappan. So if you say that the Harappan were peace-loving people, I really doubt it because, we do have large number of, tools and weapons were also found in the case of the Harappans. There the fortifications walls are there. So that suggests, they are obviously defending, whether they're defending, because of some internal or the external, that we need to see it very closely. And these are some of the basically the copper antiquities we find in the case of the Bronze Age. That what we call the Indus Valley civilizations, or later, it's called the Chalcolithic cultures in the case of the India. And then there are further, we have a lot of refinement that we have seen, whether in terms of the sand, or in terms of the axe or the spearhead. Then let us come to the post-Harappan time period, the time when we are talking about 1900 BC. So this is there is a very important site called the Sinaoli, located in the Bagpat district of the the Uttar Pradesh, where the site was excavated by the Archaeological Survey of India in 2008 and 10. Then further it was excavated in the 2017 to 20. And then what we have seen there is a very clear-cut evidences of the chariot, arrowhead, spearhead, swords and dagger, metal helmet, shield. And then these are what you see here in the case of the archaeological context. How do you get to know that there is some war what's happened? So in the case of the war, there are basically you do find mass scale burials, and then here you can see here there are large number of burials are there. So the bones that when you analyze it, you find the sharp cut of the bones, and that's how it it said which are like, maybe injured during the war. But interestingly, about that, the Sinavali site, this is also the same time period when the Mahabharata war was fought. I'm not saying that this is obviously the part of the Mahabharata, but there is some conjecture that can be seen in the case of the Sinavali site for the first time, with the findings of the chariot, findings of the, the antenna swords, findings of, what you say here, the helmet, and then also large-scale burials are there. So these are like the kind of the chariots, mostly it was used by the populations or the heroes of the Sinavali site that we find in the case of the Uttar Pradesh. And then something that is very interesting also, you find that this time period is also the copper hut culture. So we look at here, this is the kind of the copper hut implements where there are large weapons, large swords, daggers, and then antenna swords, and then many more different type of tools are also found here. Now coming to what basically we reconstruct from the ancient warfare is maybe we do find the early chariots, we do find the advanced weapons, we do find the military stratifications, then also we do find the cultural and the technological linkage that basically offers the clues to the continuity of the martial practices even in the later time period. What exactly you see here, these are basically the copper hood, the implements or the weapons that found across the different parts of India. And these are basically what? Belong to the contemporary time period or the post-Harappan time period, and they are also associated with the copper hood culture. These are look at here, the early type of the weapons that we find it. And these are what basically the antenna swords. I'm not getting into very details of it because we don't have enough time. And then these are what you see here, the earliest example of the whatever silt, okay? And these silt are basically made of the leather, and then they are inlaid with what is steel-tight beads over it. So they can, and then there are the silts are also made of the metal, so they can particularly protect them from any sharp weapons. And then what is interesting is look at this is how they found it. What you saw there is basically there's a reconstruction of this sword. This is particularly in the archaeological context. And these are what you see that some other the silt, some more further the arrowheads that is inlays there. And then this is what the kind of the sword that you find it, another cultural material. And this is the kind of the pottery that is basically associated with this kind of the culture, that's the Ossippi culture. And then further what you see here is, we start coming out of the Bronze Age to the Iron Age. So this is the kind of the weapons or the tools that start coming up nearly about 1500 BC. This is the time that is a site called the Mahorjari, located in the central India. These are the kind of the weapons that we find it. Then coming to the historical time period, so everyone knows about the 16 Janapadas, this tribal, what you say here, the chieftains of the state, the society that started coming up. And then very importantly, the Magad that we see here, okay, the land where we are now, this is basically the Veer Bihari, which belong to this land, belong to this Magad, where the foundation was basically started here. And then, what is interesting about this Magad is that this is one of the Janapada who become an empire. Okay, it starts spreading out. It starts eating all the smaller Janapadas, and then finally we know that the concept of the first Bharat or the India it started during the time of the Ashoka. So we do have plenty of references about the forts and fortifications. We do have in the case of the Shastra, that there are references how to build a fort, how to build a city from the defense perspective that we have understood very well in the case of the historical literature. There are many more other literature the Mahabharata, Manusmriti, Agni Puran, Buddhist Jatakas, Jain, some of the literatures also. They just very mentions about the early form of the forts and fortifications, and then we do have come up with larger fortified sites like Patliputra or the modern Patna, okay, where we are now currently. The Taxila, it's in Pakistan, Rajagriha in Rajgir, the Sismalgarh is the modern Bhubaneswar. the Jaugarh that is close to the Ganjam town in the case of the Odisha. So there are hundreds of forts are there in the historical time period. Now there are many different type of forts are also there. So if you look into the military strategy of the state, they used to have basically this city called the Naradurga, it's called the Mahidurga, Giridurga, or it's basically the mountain forts, and then the Jaladurga, the water forts. So there we do find many different type of the defensive architecture in the case of the India. And these are look at here, these are basically the kind of the shape of the early historic fortified settlements. They found in multiple shapes. The reason is basically what they found in many different geographical region. Now, how the forts were there? Okay, fine. So look at here, these are the forts I just pass on, okay? Because this is the kind of the gateways they used to made in the historical time period. Then we do have artistic depiction of the war in the historical time period. Look at here, these are the persons that processing with the horses along with the army. This is basically coming from the Bhimbetka. But the tradition still continue even in the tribal painting. You can see here, this is a painting from the Pithora painting from the Udaipur, and we do have depiction of large number of cavalry, elephants, and other animals in the case of the war. So there are also to find in the case of the war elephant, and then the findings are coming from basically the rock art. And then look at here, these are basically, we do find that the elephants are there used in the case of the war like the Kalinga, or that is the Battle of Hydaspes. And we have find again plenty of references in the case of the rock art. Now these are the chariots, we do use horses, we do use dogs in the case of the war. And then I just keep it, this is about the Kalinga war. And then coming to very briefly to the Rajgir, okay, what Dr. Azad and Dr. Professor Anand said, they touch upon this city of Rajagriha. So what is this city? Very important because this is basically a city of many names. That suggests what there are many different rulers who are ruled in the cities. Okay, and the Cyclopean wall, basically what is the largest fortification wall that is found in India. This is one of the walls that predate the Great Wall of Great Wall of China. And then unfortunately this wall has not been known to the greater audience throughout the world. Now, this is what you see here is the contour of the city, okay, contour of the hills, and then in between the hills, in between this, all the surrounding hills, the old city is located, and then here, and then further it was shifted to the new city. This is what the map already shown by Professor Anand Singh. And then look at here, this is the map that I made it. And then here it's very clearly said that the hills is surrounded, so the city can be saved from any kind of attack. But what we should say that the city was shifted further to the plain area, because by the time the city was shifted to the plain area, it was already the Magadh become very dominant, very powerful. So they really don't need to stay inside or within the hills. And then this one continued. And then what we see here that here this is basically showing you the north gate of the Rajgir. So there are bastions are there on the both sides where the temple is there. Okay, on the left. That's basically on the bastions. And then this is what you see here, this is called the Jarasandh Ki Akhada. This is one of the earliest example of the bastions that we find at the Rajgir city. So these are the bastions mostly, they have 8 chambers, each side 2 chambers are found. And then what we look at here, when we start exploring, we do find hundreds of bastions are there. There are more than 250 bastions are found across the hills that is basically protecting the old Magadh, capital city. Now this is basically a visual about the Cyclopean wall, and then look at here, this is what the southern gateway is. Southern gateway, there were number of bastions. The reason being is, this is the area highly secure. So you cannot really enter, anyone cannot enter without any authorization to the city. And this is just to show you the closure of the southern gateway, and then both sides of the bastions. Okay, so in between, what that the nalas is there, and then mostly it is also there are bridge could be existing in the earlier time period. This show you that how basically that the village is there. You enter from one side, and the other side when you look at here, also in the valley you have another wall. So no one from actually any side can enter within this city. And there are multiple caves are there. Already Professor Anand Singh highlighted about the importance of the caves, but what you see here is that there are multiple secret chambers are there, multiple caves are there, and then that's what this cyclopean wall is connected to it. And look at here, there are many tunnels are there. So maybe during the time of the war or the siege, these are the places where also probably the soldiers could be hiding in. But keep in mind something very important that the caves further used by the Buddhist monks, by the Jain monks in the succeeding time period. And this is the basically showing you that this wall is not found only in India, but this kind of wall also found in the Greece. They found it the Eastern Island, Peru, and other parts of the world. What is significant is that the construction technique is very important. Just 2 minutes. You see here what? This is basically you see the pomegranate, anar. So this is the kind of the architecture you see that they have taken it from a fruit, and this is what they stick to it and they remain sustained for thousands of years and still standing today. And then this is just to show you a few more pictures. I just skip it. This is the the chariot road marks that we find in the case of the entry into the city. This is about the Bimbisar jail. This is what you see the bastions from the Bible village, the remains basically. These are some more watchtowers. These are basically the round boomi, the view of the the satellite imageries. And then what you see here is basically you have the new city when you are coming up. These are what you see that this is the side about the 600 meters, and then this is the wall. And then I just want to highlight that this is the last slide, okay? And here you see that there are 2 phases of wall is there. One phase I don't know if the pointer wall here, but the upper wall, the stone wall is belong to the medieval time period, but the brick one is belong to the historical time period. This is what the excavation is undergoing by the ASI Patna circle. It was being conducted by Dr. Sujit Nayan. And this is what, thank you, Jai Hind.
Thank you, Dr. Pradhan. This is covering wide range, taking not over India, but also just traveled half part of the world. Now I just invite Dr. Sangya Pandey that her paper's title is that Warfare from Magadh to Kannauj.
Good afternoon to one and all present in the hall. I'm Dr. Sangya Pandey and from MIT University, Patna, and the topic of my presentation is Evolution of Military Power from Magadh to Kannauj. The paper will first discuss the four-folded concept of army in ancient India. The paper will also initially discuss that how the concept of army emerged in the society, and then the paper will talk about the empire, the Magadh and the rise of Mauryan Empire with the help of military, how it became one of the most prominent empires in Indian history. It will also talk about the post-Mauryan Empire, particularly Gupta Empire and its military, and it will then discuss the Kannauj and King Harshvardhan's empire. So, a regular army is a class of fighting men dedicated to the service of the state. Just give me a second. Can you please help me with this? Or just run the PPT. Okay. Sorry. So, a regular army is a class of fighting men dedicated to the service of the state. An army must be effective to be considered proper. There should be no inefficiency or waste. And after these opening thoughts, let's discuss the concept of army in ancient India. Please, next. Now, let's talk about that how the concept of army developed in our society. We all know that human beings were... Okay. Yes, okay. So, as we all know that initially human beings were nomad and and then the society, the human beings were shifted from being nomad to pastoral, and then the concept of settled society emerged, which made people to create a social contract between each other to protect the family, the concept of marriage and private property. Now, the rights of private property and the security of family life contributed to society's growing complexity, and as a result, many classes, or what we call in Indian society as castes, were created to maintain a social harmony. Society was split into several communities, in each of which given certain responsibilities, which we call it swadharma, to fulfill the benefit of all the communities without unfairly violating the rights and obligations of other communities. With the development of law and convention, it was necessary to create an authority which was absolute in nature and can enforce law and can also maintain law and order. So hence the concept of dand, which is called punishment, was introduced, and the ultimate authority was given to the king. And in order to implement the concept of dand, the king needed an army or the police, and hence the concept of army was originated. Now let's talk, just a second. Let's talk about the organization of army in ancient India. So, ancient Indian army was basically based on the game of chess, which we know in ancient India as chaturang. And as we know that in the concept of chaturang, the strategy to win the game is to either create victory in early by creating the concept of checkmate to the king or obstruction of the opponent's king. A precise replication of these techniques is evident in the ancient combat, whose primary objective was to defeat the opposing troops, achieved through the capture or dismissal of the adversary or the destruction of his army. Now, in ancient India, this concept of four-folded army was definitely there, but apart from that, there were other folds of army as well. We see particularly two folds. First is mantra, which is the force of the council, and second is kosh, which is the treasury. We have seen evidences in, particularly literary evidences in ancient India, where we have seen kings taking advice at the time of war from their councils. Particularly, we have seen this in Ramayana. On the eve of Lanka war, Ravana held a meeting with his council. Now, apart from, so the first fold of ancient Indian army was actually chariots, which was a very important part of the warfare. There are many references of chariots in Brahmans and Samhitas. There is a hymn regarding the mention of chariots in Rig Veda, and the similar kind of hymn is also there in Atharvaveda. Now, the importance of, just a second. Yes, sorry. So we also have the same kind of mention in Ramayana and Mahabharata. The concept of chariot is mentioned there. Vasudev, Arjuna, Mutali are some of the great chariots mentioned in these two epics. Just a second. As the time proceeds, the use of chariots started reducing in ancient Indian history, and we have seen no mention of chariots in Harshvardhan's army or Pulkeshin's second's army. Now, another component of army in ancient India comprises the elephant, and since ancient time, the elephants were utilized for transportation in times of peace and war, as well as in the time of conflicts as well. There are multiple depictions of animals on coinage and in architectural and sculptural artifacts from Gandhar to Rameswaram, as well as in Indonesia to signify the high record in which it regarded by ancient Indians, mostly due to its use. The Rig Veda also contains a reference to two elephants lowering their heads and charging at the enemy, marking an earlier mention of the animal's utilization in the warfare. In the earlier section of this Samhita, the elephant is regarded as the wild creature with one hand. However, in the later section, it is termed as Hastin. By the era of Yajurved Samhita, the practice of training elephants had became prevalent. Now, the third division of the ancient Indian army was cavalry. The use of cavalry as an important part of warfare has been evident in the post-Vedic period. During Rig Veda, we do not actually see, there is no particular mention of cavalry, but in Atharvaved, we had seen some mention of dust-raising horsemen. The use of cavalry is also mentioned in two great epics of the culture. The horse of Bahalika were also mentioned in the great epics. Both horses and elephants had their name also. Now the last division of army in ancient India was infantry or the footmen. So initially chariots and elephants were predominantly employed in warfare. The cavalry attended a crucial position by regular engagement with the nation that bred and greatest horses. Ultimately, the foot troops emerged, and through time, the belief grew that a large army significantly increases the likelihood of triumph. Now we will discuss about the rise of Magad Empire and the supremacy of Magad Empire through military power. And Magad has been one of the most prominent empires in Indian history, and particularly in ancient Indian history. We have seen mentioning great epics and the ancient Indian text about Magad. There is a mention of Magad, people of Magad in Atharva Samhita, and it is also mentioned in the great epic Ramayana. And Magad is referred in many contexts. We have seen in Ramayana, Vasishtha summoned numerous virtuous monarchs, including learned king of Magad, proficient in sacred text. Furthermore, it has also mentioned that the king Dashrath endeavored to placate Queen Kaikeyi by presenting her with the items produced in Magad. Now, the emergence of Magad Empire began with the assassination of Haranyak dynasty, and Bimbisar was the inaugural significant sovereign of the Haranyak dynasty. One of the celebrated kings of Magad Empire was King Ajatasattu. During his time, there was two important warfare techniques. First was the use of Mahashil Kantak, which is a large machine kind of instrument to throw rocks, and second was the use of Rath Mula, which is also which was also used for destruction of the opponent's army. We have also seen that in the pre-Mauryan era, Mahapadmanand of Nanda dynasty had a great army. The Greek classical writing described that he overthrew all the contemporary ruling houses. The army, the Greek literature also mentioned that the Nandas had a vast army, consisted of 20,000 cavalry, 2 lakhs infantry, 2,000 chariots and 3,000 elephants. Now we will talk about the Mauryan Empire, which is the most celebrated empire in ancient Indian history, and it came into power in around 322 BC when Chandragupta Maurya got into the throne of Magad, and the military strength and administrative skill of Mauryan Empire facilitated its swift expansion as Chandragupta and his successor engaged in conquest and diplomatic alliances to reinforce their authority. Just a second. The military of Mauryan Empire exemplify ancient India's excellence in battle, marked by strategic ingenuity, disciplined organization, and formidable might. The Mauryan military was instrumental in expansion and consolidation of one of ancient India's most distinguished dynasties. The core of Mauryan military had meticulously organized a hierarchy consisting of infantry, chariots, cavalry, and elephants. Each component had a specific function in empire's military strategy, enhancing its adaptability and efficiency in the combat. The infantry constituted the core of the army, consisting of foot soldiers equipped with diverse weaponry such as swords, spear, arrows. Cavalry regiment offered mobility and rapidity, facilitating swift maneuvers and unexpected raids. Chariots, diminishing its importance with the rise of cavalry, maintained their effectiveness in specific areas which are tactical in tactical scenario. Nevertheless, it was the elephant that distinctively characterized the Mauryan military, functioning as devastating instrument of warfare. These colossal creatures, fortified and conditioned for warfare, created terror in adversary formation and conferred a significant advantage in the combat. If we talk about the type of chariots during Mauryan rule, there are 6 types of chariots based on their function in the combat. There are 3 types were employed in combat. 1 type was designated solely for training. 1 type was utilized for advancing towards the enemy, and another 2 types were assigned for general opposition in the war zone. The troops used bows and arrows, and the bows were crafted to match the height of the soldiers who were using it. Some of the warriors also used javelin. Although everyone, regardless of their armament, consistently possessed a sword, which was used in war. The Mauryan imperial army comprises of 6 categories of troops. The Kshatriyas, which representing the predominantly hereditary warrior class. The foot bearers engaged for military exploits. Forces contributed by local zamindars and businessmen. Contingent supplied by allies. Defectors from the opposing side. Tribesmen from resonant forest and hills. The tactic structure of Mauryan army during this period included a fundamental unit known as Patti. You can see it on the screen, which was a composite group consisting of 1 elephant carrying these archer and spearmen, or a mahat, 3 cavalrymen equipped with javelin, round pluckers and spears, and 5 infantry soldiers armed with shielded and broadsword or bows. In contemporary military technology, it is referred to as a combined armed team. The 12 members unit, which organized into 3 groups consisting a Senamukh or company. 3 of these combined constituted a Gulma or a battalion. Units were incremented in sets of 3 constituting Akshayohini or army, which consisting 2,870 Patti. The term battle arms referred to the integration of cavalry, chariots or elephants with infantry soldiers, either collectively or as a combination of multiple elements. Bindusar, who was the 2nd emperor of Mauryan dynasty, reigned for 20 years, and he engaged in warfare continuously. In 273 BC, he was replaced by his son Asoka, who in the initial 8 years of his rule used army and established his dominance, but after adopting the policy of Dhamma, Ashok used his army for establishing army, secret police, and the system of espionage to establish peace and to spread the concept of Dham in his empire. Now we will also talk about the organization of army in Arthashastra, which is considered as the foundation text of statecraft and warfare in India. So Kautilya's, as I already mentioned, is one of the most reliable sources of not only Mauryan Empire but also of ancient Indian history. And this particular text or the book contains 15 adhikarans, or what we call as books, in which 10th adhikaran address warfare, which deals with army, organization, campaign marches, diverse combat techniques, formation, and other pertinent subjects. Kautilya established a hierarchical structure of military administration. Sure, sir. So we will just try to do it a little fast. So the head of the army was definitely the king, and after him was the commander-in-chief, which was called as Senapati. We also had chief commanders of separate corps such as elephants, cavalry, chariots, and infantry. We are also, Arthashastra also mentioned other commanders such as commander of the king's guard, which is called as Antarvasmika, commander of marches, which is called as Antapal, and commander of fort, which is called as Durgpal. Kautilya identifies 6 categories of troops, which basically comprises standing army, local volunteers, army of merchant groups, troops of an ally, some army of the opponents, tribal conscripts, and one thing which is which should be mentioned is that how Kautilya talked about the position of army, different sections of army during warfare. Kautilya divided the army into 4 groups. First was Shram, which is best, then second is Anushram, which is second best, and third is Tridiyam, which is third in rank, and fourth is Falgu, which is weak troops. So Kautilya said that during the war, the king should always put the weak army or the weak troops, which is called Falgu, in the forefront, so that if they are being killed, they can have the third best, and then the second best, and then the best army, so that the king must be properly armed with all the divisions of army. Now let's discuss about army in the post-Mauryan era. We have seen that after Mauryans, Guptas were the most celebrated dynasties of ancient India, and we have seen Samudragupta being one of the most celebrated king of ancient Indian history, and we also see that Guptas, the age of Gupta is called as classical age or golden age, because it has during this time the society developed aspects. One of the most important feature which I wanted to mention here is the use of ships and the use of navy during Gupta period, and it is mentioned in Gunaighar inscription of Venugupta that how navy was an important component in the 6th century AD during Gupta period. Apart from Guptas, another most important dynasty in ancient India was the dynasty of Harshvardhan from Kannauj, Kanekuj, which was called in ancient India, and Kannauj was during, Kannauj is actually in contemporary Uttar Pradesh. Harshvardhan was considered as sovereign of Aryavrat, and Chinese pilgrim Huyen Song has mentioned many things about Harshvardhan. Huyen Song also reported that Harshvardhan's military organization consisted of 5,000 elephants, 20,000 cavalry, 50,000 infantries, and the necessity of such a standing army is showing that how great organization was this Harsha's army was, and Harsha was also adopted and propagated the Buddhist religion, but unlike Ashoka, Harsha was more like a peaceful military king, military monarch who used army for peaceful purposes. Now, just a second. Sorry, I forgot to run the PPT. So if we try to conclude the historical development of ancient Indian military organization demonstrate a continuous adoption to geopolitical circumstances. The military powers of Mauryans characterized by concentrated power, concentrated with decentralized yet robust policies of Guptas and Harsh relying on strategic innovation, disciplined hierarchies, and integration of the novel battle techniques. The evolution highlights the essential influence of military strength on political authority. Here are some of the references which I used for my research. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Pandey, just giving very extensive historical research on military history. So, three presentations. One is that by me on how the institutionalization of military system began with the formation of first capital. Dr. Tosha Banta Pradhan just dealt with the extensive variations about tool and its formation for the military purposes, how it can be differentiated with the ordinary tool, and Dr. Pandey dealt with historical analysis. So there is 5 minutes, so we can take 2 brief questions from the audiences. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. Sir, I'm Suyesh from Nalanda University. So my question was to you. The assertion about pushing back of the Iron Age takes me back to my class where I had the honor of attending Professor Vibha Tripathi's lecture on archaeometallurgy, where a similar discussion came up. So, sir, my question is that the findings of the iron implements in the Neolithic ash mounds and other related sites of southern India may push back the dates, but the context suggests that these were mainly isolated small cultures and the spread of the iron technology isn't much visible in the archaeological context. So how do we address this pushing back of the date?
He's trying to basically say that how the iron can be 3500 BC.
Sir,
He's asking why the iron is dated to 3500 BC in Tamil Nadu, whether there are no large settlements.
Oh, actually, I'm just not saying that. General presumption that was taken when we started discussing about the use of iron and its use as a metallurgy and taken as a weapon. So it is general presumption that it was first developed around 1200 to 1400 BC and it was just much related to PGW. But recently, the hypothesis and wonderful evidences came that now just turning its shift from OCP to megalithic culture. So definitely, if this trend, and it was endorsed by not only the Indian archaeologists, it is endorsed by archaeologists across the world. So this kind of things, if it is coming in picture, and then finally if you are going that it's beginning from ash mound culture to in the Neolithic age and then its transformation to the megalithic culture. And that megalithic culture is not localized only to South India. It is all sphere of the South India from Tamil Nadu to Andhra region, and its extension is found in the Kamur range, just covering the whole Bihar. So you find that where Ashoka's inscription is found from Ratanpurwa, from Aharaura, from Sasaram, you find it all is embedded by the megalithic culture. So this kind of extension just give you idea that if this kind of iron theory is going to be established, definitely some kind of state formation that begins, it has some replications directly from the South India rather than we believe from the second urbanization. So that is it just came few weeks back probably. So we have to just wait that what is going to be just the more concrete evidences and hypotheses the archaeologists or historians are going to develop.
My question is to Dr. Sangya ma'am. Good morning ma'am, good morning everyone. Ma'am, my name is Shubhangi Sharma and I'm a student of BLLB at Amity University, Patna. Ma'am, you have explained the structure and significance of the modern army in detail. So I was wondering, what is the basic difference between the army in the post-modern era and the modern era?
Thank you, Shubhangi, for the question. So, one of the basic differences which I can mention here is the use of navy, which is in the modern era we don't really see any mention of navy in any significant historical source, but during Gupta period we have seen the use of navy, and in the Allahabad pillar inscription of Samudragupta it has been mentioned that Samudragupta established his supremacy in many islands, particularly Simla. So that is one of the major differences.
Okay, thank you ma'am. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dr. Kajri Kamal from Takshashila Institution. Both the questions that I had for the panelists have already been asked, but I want to ask a follow-up. So for the first question, I wanted Dr. Pradhan to answer that, since you've seen it from an archaeologist's perspective. To what extent do you see the trajectory of tools that you've shown us through your presentation confirm this thesis of Iron Age being pushed back? So I want you to answer that. And Dr. Pandey, again, the same question. I wanted to know, so in the modern period, we do hear of coast guards. We do hear of people manning the water and sea routes because trade was an important input for the modern economy. But you mentioned that with the Guptas, a full-fledged navy came about. I wanted to understand what might have been the impetus for the Gupta period to have a full-fledged navy. Did they feel threatened, or was it just to take care of the trade routes?
I mean, brief time is up.
Sorry. Yeah.
So answer one by one briefly.
Yeah, thank you, madam, for the questions. See, the dating. See, the dating of iron is a little bit controversial still yet about the Tamil Nadu thing, because the dates is coming about 2500 BC. So mean to say that by that time still the Harappan cultures were continued, okay? Now, something that you also need to be think about right now is that the Tamil Nadu government is also pushing back somehow, because I mean to say that it's never happened. This is the first time, like in the history, that archaeology is being part of the politics, okay? So somehow the state is, advocating even the earlier dates. But now what we really see in the case of the archaeological context is that if there is early dates of the iron, then why don't we find larger settlement? Why we don't see any kind of the monumental structures that is coming up in the case of the South India? Because these are the settlements where the early dates are coming they are basically smaller settlement. So that's why among the archaeologists also, they're still wondering why the date is actually pushing back, and still we need to find out also from the other sides to verify whether the dates they're really early, or there are some issues with the dating, issues with the the methods, or maybe issues with the context that coming out from the particular site that we're talking about. Thank you.
Okay, for your question, first thing is in the postmodern era, we have seen foreign contacts, more foreign contacts from India particularly. Yeah, that definitely has opened a contact between India and the outer world. It's not that earlier there was no contact, but yes, definitely this could be one of the reasons. Other is that Gupta shifted from Bihar towards other parts of the countries, and Samudragupta being one of the most celebrated kings of ancient Indian history has definitely wanted to acquire major parts of the country, and that could not have been possible without the use of navy. So this could be one of the reasons. Thank you.
So thank you, the two panelists, for their wonderful presentation. And again, I'm thanking you, the Bihar Regiment and senior most officers, to giving us such a wonderful opportunity. And about the panel, this panel has a wonderful context and contestations. So I hope that it is going to reshape this kind of discussions and deliberation that has started almost few months back, is going to reshape the historical as well as cultural tradition of India. So we are hoping some new researchers, wonderful researchers, so this can be treated as a thread of such kind of researches and debate. Thank you all again.
Thank you so much. I request Major General B.K. Sharma to the stage to facilitate our esteemed panelists. I request Jen Sharma and our panelists for a group photograph, please. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a short break. We shall reassemble at 3:45 for our session number 3. Thank you so much. Lieutenant General Abhay Krishna has had an illustrious military career spanning nearly 40 years, distinguished by his role as Army Commander of the Southwestern, Eastern and Central Commands. Educated at St. Xavier's Patna and the Science College Patna, he joined the National Defence Academy in June 1976. He commanded the Eastern Army during the Doklam confrontation, which was aggressively and successfully handled on the ground. He has been conferred with 8 awards, including 5 presidential awards and a gallantry award. He received a gallantry award for bravely resolving a hostage crisis with rebels in Mozambique. Welcome, sir. Our first panelist, Dr. Kajri Kamal, is an associate professor at the Takshila Institution of Bangalore, where she leads courses on Kautilya's Arthashastra through various formats. Her dissertation focused on the connections between Kautilya's concept and India's foreign policy across 2 significant historical periods. Dr. Kamal frequently engages as a speaker at esteemed defense institutions like NDC, Naval War College, Defense Service Staff College, and College of Defense Management, and offers her expertise to the Institution of Constitutional and Parliamentary Studies. Her book on Kautilya's Arthashastra and India's Contemporary Statecraft was published globally in August 2022. Welcome, ma'am.
Dr. Deepti Tiwari, our second panelist, is a distinguished historian specializing in modern history. Currently, she serves as the assistant professor and head of the PG Department of History at Patna University. Over the past 5 years, Dr. Tiwari has made valuable contribution to historical research, evidenced by her publication on gender analysis, regional history, and on topics like human rights and intellectual property rights in recognized journals. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Deepti on the dais, please. Welcome, ma'am. Dr. Saurav Mishra, our third panelist, is a research fellow at the Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defense Studies and Analysis, New Delhi. Prior to MD IDSA, he was an associate professor at the Amity Institute of Defense and Strategic Studies, Noida, preceded by his assignments as a research fellow at the Indian Council of World Affairs, an autonomous think tank of the Ministry of External Affairs. He has acquired his PhD from Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. Please welcome Dr. Saurav Mishra on the dais. Ladies and gentlemen.
Am I audible? Yeah, young boys and girls, am I audible? I can't hear you. You're not? Okay. Now, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, the honored guests, esteemed scholars, distinguished participants, and all the young boys and girls. Now I know that it has been a very long session today, but I must tell you that the topic that we are going to discuss now, it relates to intellect. And Kautilya or the Chanakya was not the only one who was blessed with that intellect. All of you who are sitting here are blessed with that intellect. So once this discussion goes on, please remember that it relates to your intellect. And therefore, I would like you all to ask maximum questions at the end of the session with our panelists. Will you do that? Okay. So I take it as a matter of great privilege and pride to stand before you today as we embark on, as I said, a journey through history, politics, and economic thought. a journey that ties us with the rich past of Bihar culture and Chotta Nagpur, play to the enduring wisdom of Kautilya's Arthashastra. But I must tell you that the Arthashastra is more than just an ancient Indian text. It is a strategic masterstroke, like Dr. Pandey, when she was talking here, she made a mention of that. That it's a strategic masterstroke, a blueprint for governance, power and diplomacy that remains as relevant today as it was over 2 millennia ago. Kautilya, a scholar, strategist, and an advisor to the Emperor Chandragupta Maurya, whose genius lay in his ability to blend the real politic with the social welfare, always with a singular focus, and that singular focus was stability and prosperity of state. And that is what actually we need in Bihar today. Anyway, so as we step into this discussion today, let us ask ourselves that what held these ancient societies together? What guided their administration, their economy and their diplomacy? Can you answer? What is that? The answer lies in Arthashastra, a text that does not merely belong to the history, but continues to shape the future even today. So with that, let us begin the fascinating discourse of this third session and the last one with our first speaker, Dr. Kajari Kamal. She is here, who will talk about Kautilya's Arthashastra, covering the aspect of political economic approach to statecraft. Dr. Kajari is an associate professor at Takshila Institution, Bangalore, who is also into a big time writing on several platforms. Am I right? As also she is a regular guest speaker at number of defense institutions. So I request her to please enlighten us with this subject today.
Am I audible to everyone? Okay. Respected Chair, General Krishna, esteemed co-panelists on the dais with me, members of the audience, a very good evening. At the outset, I'd like to thank both the Bihar Regimental Center, especially the Commandant, Brigadier Jaspal, Colonel Hundal sitting here in front of us, and the United Services Institution for giving me this opportunity to present to you all my thoughts on a political economic approach to statecraft coming from Kautilya's Arthashastra. Now this treatise is a homegrown treatise. It has emanated from this region, this geography, which we are in today. And it's only befitting that we discuss this treatise at this forum. Can I request the audience at the back to be a little more attentive? There's a lot of background noise. Thank you. This is the agenda of my talk, and I've divided it into two sections. The first is a historical overview of this region, which is Bihar, Chotta, Nagpur, wherein I'll very briefly discuss the political history, the geographical advantages, and this phenomena which I think has occurred many number of times since the morning, second, urbanization. But what I want to concentrate more on in this section is the associated socio-political cultural changes that came about. And it is in this cultural context that I will then place this treatise, Kautilya's Arthashastra. I'll tell you about its importance, I'll tell you about the nature, origin of the text, and then show to you how it came to be a pragmatic response to the changes that were brought about in the society, in the culture, because of these material changes that we've discussed through several sessions since the morning. So I'll be very brief on the political history because you've all gone through all of that. And in my concluding remarks, I'd like to highlight the USP of the text, which is that it has a very substantive normative dimension, even though it's a classic on realism. Let's begin with the political history. And we've seen a lot of it, so I'll just skim through the slides. This is a political map of 3 major empires that have come up from this region. The shortest one at the core of the Indo-Gangetic belt is the Magadhan Empire, which has been spoken about. The one which is occupying the largest territory, almost a virtually subcontinental empire, is that of the Mauryan. And the one slightly short of the Mauryan is the Gupta. Right? So they came up in different time periods. Of course, the Mauryan was followed by the Magadhan, and the Guptas came much later. We all know that the ancient Indian political landscape was dotted by several Mahajanapadas, 16 to be precise, and anywhere between the 6th and 4th centuries BC, Magad as a Mahajanapada came out to be the stronger amongst the others. Remember, there was always this law of the fish, Matsya, which was going on between the 16 Mahajanapadas. And the various dynasties that came to rule over Magad were the Haranikas. The previous speakers have spoken about it. Bimbisar and Ajatashatru were the Haranika rulers. Ajatashatru is known to have fortified Patliputra. Udayan, the grandson of Ajatashatru, is really the one who's credited with founding of the city of Patliputra. This was followed by the Sheshunagas, and finally the Nandas came in. We all know about Dhanananda, the last of the Nanda ruler, who fell out with Chanakya or Kautilya and was replaced by Chandragupta Maurya, the first Mauryan ruler, followed by Bindusar, and of course the greatest emperor of all time, Ashoka. The Mauryan dynasty also came to an end and was replaced by the Shungas. All right, that's a very, very brief political history. Now, why is it that this region was important? I will very crisply bring out 4 points, and I'm sure they may have been discussed in different forums before this. First, very important, that this gave a very fertile ground for a civilization to come up. Now, why was fertility important? It was important because it meant greater economic production, greater agricultural production, which led to ample revenues. Ample revenue is extremely important for formation of states. It is also extremely mineral rich, right? We've heard of coal and iron ore coming here. Why is rich in minerals important? Because it gave an impetus to weapons manufacturing. For the first time you hear of new weapons like catapult, swinging maces, covered chariots, for the very first time in this region. War elephants, again we've heard of this, but war elephants were a crucial factor in ancient Indian warfare, and this region was had enough of this. Riverine location. This region is girdled between Ganga and 2 of its tributaries, Champa and Son. And why are these river courses important? For transport of both troops and goods. We heard of the Uttarapath and Dakshinapath briefly in the past session. This region was also very well connected with the various trade routes, which were extremely prosperous and linked the Indian political subcontinent to Southeast Asia and to West Asia, depending on the routes. So Brihatkach on the west coast connected the Indian subcontinent to the West Asia, and Tamralipti on the southeast connected it to Southeast Asia. Now, while the political developments were happening, concomitant to that, there were intense socio-economic developments that followed it, right? And that came to be described as what we understand the second urbanization. The first being the Indus Valley, this being the second. What does second urbanization mean? It means the emergence of a number of urban centers in the Indo-Gangetic plain, right? And that led to a lot of churn and ferment in the society. It was driven by these factors. There was agrarian expansion. Why was there agrarian expansion? Because of fertile soil, because of iron implements being used for agriculture. There was demographic growth because the surplus could support a rising population. There was craft specialization. So in this region, you actually see the coming up of new craft technology, the northern black polish ware as we know it. There was monetization of exchange. You see silver, you see punchmark coins in silver and cast copper. And there was long distance trade. And this became the basis for the establishment of both powerful empires and complex societies. Why powerful empires? Because you had greater agricultural growth, you had greater surpluses, you had greater tax revenues, you had greater raw material to support a well-honed army. And that's how you could think of empire building. With the coming in of trade specialization, you had a new class of people coming up. And this new class of people, be it the Purush Pradhan or the Nagar Mukhyas, they had political influence on the urban political structures. The new set of merchant class that came out, that Dr. Singh spoke about, the Settis and the Nagapattis, they actually leaned towards a heterodox sect, Buddhism and Jainism, and broke away from Brahminical orthodoxy. Right? Very importantly, this was an extremely cosmopolitan region which fundamentally led to the society being heterogeneous and leaning towards unorthodoxy. Now you'd wonder why all this is important when we're talking about a political treatise, and I'll just try and fit the two themes together. So essentially, if you look at the trajectory from the Rig Vedic to the later Vedic and the period where these states really got formed, you see the material culture of that particular episode that we're talking about shaping the socio-political milieu. And it's only in the third stage that the material culture shaped the forming of states, and with the result of which the treatises that you hear on statecraft or governance or administration or centralized army or taxation only came up during this period. So the Anushasan and the Shanti Parvas of the Mahabharata and Kautilya's Arthashastra can be traced back to this period, and it is in this political socio-economic context that the treatise was written. Now, I would want you to hold on to this context that I have painted, because the whole point of talking about the Arthashastra is not in isolation, but to link it to this context in which it was written. So very briefly, for those who are unfamiliar with the treatise on the origin and nature of the text, the names, first of all, there's a lot of debate between the dating and authorship of the text. The debate is still unsettled. So if I'm following a certain school of thought, in this case it's R.P. Kangles, then Chanakya, Kautilya and Vishnugupta are names of the same person. Chanakya's son is Chanakya. Kautilya, the goth to which he belonged was Kutal, so Kautilya, and Vishnugupta was his first name. The period ascribed to him is anywhere between the 4th century BC and 3rd century CE, and this is really incorporating all the debates about the dating of the treatise. He both studied at Takshila and later became a teacher there, and the story that we know that he got Chandragupta Maurya put on the throne of the Mauryan Empire is perhaps correct. We have the Sanskrit drama by Vishaka Datta, Mudra Rakshasa, which tells us all about it. It's important to know the nature of the treatise. This happens to be the cover page of the first translated work of the manuscript, which was rediscovered in 1904-1905, and this translated work is by R. Shama Shastri. The entire treatise is written in a sutra tradition. Now, all the speakers since the morning have been saying that the Arthashastra is a very, very valid, credible resource, literary source for the Mauryan Empire. While we would like to believe that, Kautilya does not mention Chandragupta Maurya even once in the entire treatise. The one sutra which mentions about Dhanananda, which is towards the last, is perhaps a later redaction. So the treatise itself says that it does not connect with the historical context. It's not a historiographical account of what was happening. Unlike several other treatises written in other geographies like the Sun Tzu's Art of War or Machiavelli's Prince, they were talking about actual events on the ground. Kautilya was not talking about that. Why? Perhaps he meant it to be a philosophical classic to be invoked in any new strategic context. So even today, if you read a sutra, because it is not tied down to any historical context, you can make sense of that sutra in today's contemporary world as well. It is normative instructional, it alludes to a certain set of norms, and it's meant to be an instruction for the ruling class and the ruler. It is experience saturated. So this text is not in isolation. This text is a compilation of a 200-year-old Artha tradition. And how does Kautilya compile it? And this is for all the students present in the audience. I want your attention here. Kautilya says that a previous Artha scholar says in this context, this should be done. And he says, in this scenario, I agree with him. In another scenario, I do not agree with him. And he gives a logical reason as to why he disagrees with the previous legacy of an Artha scholar. So it is a compilation of past wisdom, something that you really cannot do away with. Yet at the same time, you need to continuously test its credibility and relatability to the context in which you're reading it. So it's a combination of received wisdom and empiricism and observation on the ground, and that's how any thesis should also be written, right? This text is a revisionist text. It's the first time that there was this desire to establish a pan-Indian empire, and therefore you were moving from one Mahajanapadas to create this entire political umbrella which encompasses the entire Indian political subcontinent. And that is why the treatise is important. Okay, I've got 4 other reasons why this treatise is important, and I'll quickly go over them. The first, as I mentioned, that for the very first time there existed this cohesive Indian geocultural space with the desire to establish a pan-Indian empire encompassing it. And it is in this political context that the treatise is written. If you see the extent of this empire, it's quite similar to independent India post-1947. And therefore the principles enshrined in this treatise on statecraft are of utmost relevance to independent Indians. 2, as I mentioned, it's not text in isolation. It is an eminent part of the broader strategic and philosophical traditions. There's any number of connections that you can draw with the Arthashastra and the Mahabharata and the Ramayana and even the Vedas, and any number of inspiration that later texts and treatises on statecraft have borrowed from Kautilya, including Kamandat's Niti Sar. It's an extremely comprehensive treatise, so at one stage it talks about grand strategy, but also thoroughly talks about military tactics as well. And the last, which is really the essence of my talk today, is that it injects a very practical dose of reason to the discourse on kingship that was going on. So it's at a pivotal juncture where things are moving from tribal polity to established states and empires. And therefore you needed to have a certain framework to run the government, and the framework that came about in the Arthashastra is the political economic approach to statecraft. Now I'm going to demonstrate how this text potentially, perhaps, this is not written anywhere, this is my own understanding, could have been a response to the socio-political changes that I painted in the first half of my agenda. So I've identified 4 changes, and you'll all agree with me. The first, that we moved to an agriculture-based economy and there was social surplus. And that, to my mind, would have perhaps have been the impetus for this political economic approach that I'm going to tell you about. The second, that there was heterogeneity in society. People were not socially fettered. There was a general unfettering of social behavior. People were thinking on alternate lines. And therefore there's a certain amount of a-religiousness and secularity which has been intentionally infused into the treatise to cater to a larger, wider audience. There's weakening of the Varna-based valor that we hear in the epics. And here you will fight only for state interests, not for glory. Because there's a desire for empire building, and how is this desire confirmed? Because of iron implements, because of weaponry, because of agricultural production, because of greater revenue. Kautilya then devises an interstate theory called the Rajamandala theory, which you do not see in action previously. Now, what is this political economic approach? So as we all know, the 16 Mahajanapadas were a combination of Ganasanghas, republics, and Rajyas or monarchies. Kautilya is talking about a monarchical form of government. Now, who's at the top of the monarchy? The Swami, or the ruler. What was he supposed to do? He was supposed to provide, acquire, consolidate land and make it available to the people. Why is land important? Because 2,300 years ago, if you needed to gainfully produce, you had to come from land. It had to come from land. Agriculture, cattle rearing, forest produce. And because that provided livelihood to the people, the praja were happy. Because what do the people need? People are selfishly predisposed. They need roti, kapda, makan. And once their roti, kapda, makan needs are met, they will lend legitimacy to the monarch and also willingly pay the taxes, which is important for maintenance of the state. Because of the payment of taxes, the treasury is affluent with funds, and because the treasury is affluent with funds, the army is well honed, because of which the ruler is able to curb Matsya, which is the law of the fish in the internal realm, and also wield the rod more effectively in the interstate realm. And through a loop of all these activities, Kautilya achieves what he calls the political end goal of the treatise, which is Yoga Kshema. Yoga plus Kshema, a term which appears first in the Vedas, in the Rig Veda. And he defines it as General Krishna mentioned in his introductory remark, providing security and welfare to his people. Now I want you to take note of these two aspects. Only if you provide security can you get welfare, and only if you provide welfare can you get security. The two cannot be de-linked from each other, right? And that's extremely important for this political economic approach, something that we credit Adam Smith for, but Kautilya, I think, did it in a much more meticulous manner centuries before him. So the text has a materialist stance, there's no denying that. He says Artha is the root of everything. If Artha is the root, only then can you have Dharma, and only then can you have Kam. He talks about the Trivarg, Artha, Dharma and Kam. Let's come to the second aspect. So there was general heterogeneity in society, and you had to cater to audiences that thought differently, away from the Brahminical order that was prevalent until then. Kautilya introduced as part of king's training a very important science called Anvikshiki, which is a combination of Anu plus Iksha. Anu is after, Iksha is to think. So it essentially means reconsideration. And for Kautilya, the ruler ought to be trained in first Anvikshiki, second Vedas, third economics, and fourth political science. And it was his sense of Anvikshiki, his sense of inquiry that would tell him that in the Vedas was good or bad in terms of economic and political policy. So what guided him was not the Vedas, it was not the Dharma Shastra or the law book. What guided him was what he saw in front of him and how he made sense of the reality. Therefore, this philosophical structure called Anvikshiki had a very strong philosophical substructure of three schools of Indian philosophy: Samkhya, Yoga, and Lokayat. Samkhya and Yoga are from the orthodox school. They believe in the infallibility of Vedas, but it's a very novel inclusion for Kautilya to have incorporated Lokayat. And why might that be the case? Why would Kautilya want to incorporate a heterodox sect as part of a philosophical substructure of his treatise? Because of rising Buddhism and Jainism, because of people's tendencies changing, because of the socio-economic political ferment that the social fabric was witnessing. Coming to this understanding of fighting wars, and in the previous session there was a lot of emphasis on Kshatriyahood and valor and warfare, and a lot of emphasis on that. Kautilya devises a way of understanding power which is very different from a Varna-based valor system. So he says that there are 7 body parts which constitute state power in the Arthashastra. And these 7 constituent elements of the state correspond to 7 parts of the body. The first 2 most important, and this is in a hierarchy, and that's why you see the arrow, Swami being the most important corresponds to the head, the fountainhead, Amatya to the eyes because they keep a watchful eye. Janpad, the very first material aspect of power for Kautilya is his people and territory. And only then does he come to fort, kosh and dand. What's important to note here are 2 points. One, that the intellectual power that General Krishna mentioned is given a premium. How do you think? How do you take those decisions? And his training in Anvikshiki helps him do that. But more importantly, if you see there are first 6 are internal state factors, and dand, which is the use of force, is the last of the internal state factors. And there is a novel inclusion of an ally which is an external state factor which only Morgenthau latches on to when he talks somewhere in the 20th century. What is the strategy that one should devise to use power? Definitely force as a last resort. Why should force be used as a last resort? Because wars lead to share, which is expenses, shares losses, wear expenses, and pravas, which is demoralization of the army, especially when they engaged in long hauls. So he then suggests a linear Sam, Dan, Bhed and Dand in that order, or an alternate. So you do a Sam and Dan, then go to Bhed, Dand, come back to Sam and Dan. Or the most potent is a combination of all four simultaneously. Because the ultimate goal was to unify the Indian political subcontinent under one political umbrella, he devised this interstate theory, which is very famously called the Rajamandala theory. Raja Mandala, circle of kings. So what is this theory? There are 12 categories of states here, as you can see. The ones marked in green and yellow are roughly co-equal, and they are 10 in number. The one in orange is called the Madhyam, which sits abutting the territory of the Vijigishu, which is the potential conqueror, and the Ari, is capable of helping them or dividing them as its own political interest may demand. And the last 12 categories, the Udasana, which sits somewhere outside. Again, it's much bigger than the Vijigishu, Ari and Madhyam put together and may harbor intentions to keep them united or disunited. Importantly, what determines a category of a state are three factors. It's geography, the relative strength that it has, and the intention that it harbors towards you, right? The bhavin. So the interstate realm is in a constant state of flux. Every state is trying to move up the cycle of advancement and sends different signals to other states, and that, based on relative strength, you decide on the foreign policy action. I'm not going to go into details on this, but if there's a question, I'll be happy to answer. I'll conclude with what I think is the USP of the text. So the text, as you may have figured out by now, hopefully, was written really to unify this Indian political subcontinent under one political umbrella and finally got achieved under the Mauryan Empire. But this end was rational at one end and normative at the other, in the sense that Kautilya was very sure about the region which he called Chakravarti Kshetra, the region of the sovereign, south of the Himalayas, north of the seas, 1,000 yojanas west to east, and he said that we cannot go beyond this. Why can't we go beyond it? The rational reason that these are geographically defensible, so it's easy to defend this territory. But ethical reason is that people beyond this may or may not allude to your uniform cultural norms that the people living in this geography do, and therefore you cannot impose a model on the other. Look at the means. The means are the saptangas, which are a mix of intellectual, material, and psychological. But very importantly, Kautilya says if you need to increase the power of your state, you don't need to fill in the treasury, you don't need to hone your army. All you need to do is concentrate on your people, because resource comes from the countryside, right? So in this process, very rational act of increasing a state's comprehensive national power, it has a very concomitant normative side of bringing up the welfare of the people. The ways. Shadgunyas are the 6 measures of foreign policy. They're extremely prudent. Kautilya says you cannot go to war with an adversary who's much greater or stronger than you, because obviously you're going to be taken out. Justness, the upayas are supposed to be used very, very justly. He says that if the king uses the rod severely, he is despised. It will lead to revolts and rebellions. If the king uses the rod weakly or meekly, he's despised. Did I say that? If he uses it justly, is he really honored? So how does the ruler figure out what's the justness? Through history, magnum opus on grand strategy, etc., etc. I want to highlight this point about the text being extremely smart in terms of adapting to the changing reality around it. And 2, that in being a realist text, an out-and-out realist text, it does not jettison from a very strong ethical underpinning, which is something which is extremely unique to this treatise and not seen in any other treatise on statecraft in any. That's all I have as part of my presentation. I'll be happy to take questions. I hope I'm not flouted the timeline, or have I finished early?
I find that a lot of students have left, but I want to assure you one thing, that it was Arthashastra which charted the course of governance of this world, and it continues to chart. It will continue to function in future also. So no matter how much AI comes into our life, one thing you must remember very confidently is that it cannot replace your intellect. The intellect that you are blessed with, each one of you. So please rely on your intellect and take your life forward using that intellect. And that is why it's very important session to understand about Arthashastra, Kautilya, who charted the course of the entire world, and it continues even today. So now, having heard Dr. Kajari, who beautifully covered the historical overview of the Bihar and Chotta Nagpur plateau, as also the major aspects of Kautilya's Arthashastra. Now I welcome Dr. Dipti Tiwari, who is the head and the assistant professor at Patna University here itself, and is a known great achiever in the academic field. Am I right? You are known for that. And she will talk on the Arthashastra tradition and its origin.
Good evening, all of you present here, respected chair, my fellow panelists, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank Bihar Regimental Center for inviting me here and give me this huge opportunity to present a paper before all of you. I really feel very honored. And today, I want to focus not what Arthashastra is, but what are the different opinions of different scholars, not only Indian, but also foreign scholars, what they wrote about the composition of Arthashastra, when Arthashastra have been composed, what is it real or myth. There are different types of opinion regarding Arthashastra, and I want to focus on that, not what about Arthashastra. Now, let's start my presentation. This is the original poem Arthashastra, which is kept in the Oriental Research Institute of Mysore. This is, you can see, this is palm leaf document. And this is the photo of R. Shamashastri, who, you can say, the modern word was introduced by the Arthashastra by the efforts of this great scholar of Mysore, who obtained a copy of it and started publishing its translation in an Indian antiquary, and in 1909, the entire book was published. Since then, it was a matter of debate regarding the time of composition and authorship of Arthashastra. And you can see here, this is the Oriental Research of Mysore, Research Institute of Mysore, where the original Arthashastra manuscript is kept at present. And as I said before, there are different scholars' views regarding the authorship of Arthashastra. German scholars named Hilbrand, Hertel, and Jacobi considered Arthashastra to be the work of Kautilya. In 1914, Vincent Smith, in the third edition of his book, Early History, declared Arthashastra as the author of Arthashastra. The book, as I said before, is a form of palm leaf document, which I have shown you before, is currently kept in this institute. And not only foreign scholars, but lots of Indian scholars like Shama Sastri, who discovered it, Jaiswal, Ramesh Chandra Majumdar, Upendra Dhoshal, Vinay Kumar Sarkar, etc., also threw light on the authorship and period of Arthashastra. In the 1923, German scholar Joly in Punjab Sansad series declared Arthashastra to be a work of 3rd century AD. As the previous scholar has told you, previous panelist, that the time period of Arthashastra is very debatable. 4th century BCE to 3rd century AD. And my focus will be on that point. what different scholars said about this. In a book named Metasthenes and Tortille, a scholar named Otto Steins showed contradiction in many things said by Metasthenes and Tortille. Like Metasthenes, what the naval point of view of Metasthenes is just different about the naval of some more scholars to make a clear view about the authorship and dates of Tortille Archas. Hemchand Chattopadhyay has determined the date of composition of 3rd century, Archa, date of exactly the 3rd century. Shama Shastri, who discovered this, has considered this poetry to be before Yajnavalkya Smriti. O.P. Jaiswal, another very distinguished scholar, while doing the comparative study of Archas and Manusmriti and Yajnavalkya Smriti, clearly said that the in Archas, we see the clear picture of the days, the lifestyle, and what were there about in Archas. And in Yajnavalkya Smriti, there is a vivid picture of Satvahan era. Vincent Smith, as I said before, says that Archas discuss modern politics just like civics. Now, I want to show some more scholars. Scholars like Halch, Jaiswal, Bhandarkar have compared the Archas with the Ashoka's inscription. As we all know very nicely, the most important, authentic, and archaeological source of information regarding the modern period is Ashoka's inscription. And they want to show us the similarity between the Ashokan inscription and Archas. Now, I want to give some, example. Just like Bhandarkar has compared Ashoka's declaration of Adhat. Adhat means prohibition of killing of animals and declaration on societies with Archas. It means he showed some similarity between them. German scholar Hildenbrand is also of the opinion that Archas was composed by same Tortille, who was Chandragupta Maurya Amartya. But here the main point is, but the Tortille sect may have edited some of the parts. It means Tortille dispelled tradition. After some time, some things have been added in Tortille Archas. While Jacobi explained that entire Archas is the work of single person. Despite being important, the views of these Indian and foreign scholars, we were not able to reach to any conclusion. The process of discussion among scholars on the date of Tortille Archas is still continued, and the debate is still continuing. Now the modern R.S. Tripathi, Neelkanth Shastri, A.L. Bhasham, Romila Thapar, and many more scholars today are giving their views regarding the authorship of Archas and the dates of Archas. Ramcharan Sharma, the renowned scholar, his view regarding the date and authorship of both Archas, which is more important, as I can say, from the practical point of view than religious point of view. Supporting the views of Ghoshal, he points out that the material of Archas can't be used in the context of modern period only. Given the text available to us, it doesn't appear to have written at single time or single place. Most of it has been written in prose, language style prevalent in 1st century BC, but its verse part, which is written in poetry, is of later period. He gave some other points, like the names of Patliputra or modern period rulers are not mentioned in it. The difference between, as you all know, the time of Ashoka, the main language of state is Prakrit. The Prakrit language of Ashoka period and Sanskrit is clear. A small officer, he gave many differences between them. I want to show some more important points. Like a small officer Yutta has been discussed by both Ashoka and Tortille, but no conclusion comes for it. Tortille has discussed the administrative unit called Ahar of the Ashoka period, but even on the basis of it, Archas cannot be creation of the modern period. Therefore, we can say that some part of it was compiled in the first 2 centuries of era, or some part touches the modern period. Like we can say the main point of Archas is the state controls on the economic trends. Mentioned by Metasthenes would be the complete harmony with the controls suggested by Tortille. There are some similarities also. That was the point of debate is still continue, because there are some similarities and there are some dissimilarities. Some scholars want to show what are similar between modern period and Tautilya's Arthashastra, and some scholars want to focus on the difference between them. This book was, some persons say, this book was not composed by any one person at a particular time, and the impression of modern period was less visible on it. This would be more in tune with the Tushan period, and some people said that it cannot be considered before the modern period and after the post-Tushana period. It means the Arthashastra is written in between these two dynasties. That's the point of debate between 400 BCE and 3rd century AD. Certainly this book is of high quality economic system, and no any other Indian test will be able to challenge the economic importance of this book. It is said that, another word, it is said that Tautilya was also known as Chanakya because he was a son of Chanakya. Because of beans and Tautilya, now you can relate Tautilya comes from Tutil. Tutil means Chalak, and because Tautilya was a shrewd politician, Chanakya was a shrewd politician, as we all know, that's why its name is Tautilya. Tautil comes from Tutil. And many more scholars have told about this. Now, if you want to talk about the division of this book it is very normal. 15 books, Adityaran, 150 chapters and 180 sections, Pradharan. The book mainly considers the practical problems of governance. It is very useful from the point of view of knowing and understanding science and technology. Importantly, light had been shown on women, intelligence, panel system, and there is a detailed discussion on craftsmanship. This book gives us the message of staying away from superstition. We want to show you that superstition, we want to focus on it, that this book completely discourages from believing in superstition. And Pandit Shyama Shastri, the most important scholar relating to Arthashastra, to clearly tell us that Arthashastra is the work of Tautilya and it's available in its original form, but also supported by some German scholars. There is one more view regarding the Arthashastra is faith or real. Some scholars also show that, like, the Tautilya is not real the name of author. It is a fictitious name. Arthashastra is a faith test written in 3rd century. Some scholars like Augustine, Dr. Joly want to prove that Arthashastra is a faith test written in 3rd century, while the one needs confirm Dr. Joly opinion. Dr. Teeth, as I mentioned in before, by writing an article in the first part of Sir Ashutosh Memorial book in 1920 AD, proved and want to prove, I then said this, the Arthashastra could never have been composed before 300 AD. But Indian scholars like Dr. Jaiswal refuted Dr. Joly's misleading propaganda and his argument quoted in the preface and made it clear on the basis of authentic grounds that great text of Sanskrit literature like Arthashastra is not faith. And Tautilya was not a fictional person but was a great Mahamatya of Emperor Chandragupta Maurya. Arthashastra is his work and it is available in its original and authentic form, which was composed in 4th century BC, and it is still debating process. Similarly, Sri Jayachand Vidyananda also extensively criticizing the argument given by foreign scholars who said that Arthashastra is a faith document, and presented his opinion in support of other historians that Tautilya was the royal minister of Chandragupta and Arthashastra is his verse, which is available in its authentic form. He presented his argument in support of Arthashastra is a composition of 300 BC. Now I also want to show the scientific method which Dr. Trotman has tried to tell the period of creation of tribunals mentioned in Tautilya Arthashastra. On the basis of scientific method, he explains the creation of only one part of Arthashastra is related to Tautilya. The author has thus stated that Arthashastra was composed around 150 AD. The composition of entire Arthashastra was completed around 250 AD, and the Arthashastra was compiled by one person, but the author of Arthashastra cannot be one person. It means through scientific method, he wants to prove that Arthashastra is compiled by one person, not composed by the one person. If Trotman's area is accepted, that it would be natural to come to the conclusion that this test cannot be used only for the Maurya period. Romila Thapar, now I want to show you the viewpoint of Romila Thapar, who attributes the authorship of Arthashastra to Vishnugupta, who composed this text in the 3rd century. It has been composed considering Magad as the main center, and the author of this book was Kautilya. Some scholars also named it as Chanakya, as I told you earlier. This book encourages the centralized system of governance. Increased revenue is said to be necessary to run the state system. If I want to conclude the whole discussion or whole debate, then I can say R.S. Sharma considers the Arthashastra written by Kautilya to be the oldest and fundamental text of this time. Indian scholars, as I said before, there are two types of view. Indian scholars consider it to from the modern period, while the European scholars consider it to be a creation after the Maurya period. As I conclude from the text of Arthashastra, it becomes clear that text has not been written at one time at one place. Most of the book has been written in prose following a sutra style prevalent till the 1st century BCE, and its verse, prose, poetry start has been added later. The book, as I know, that the book covers all the subjects like economics, sociology, politics, but in most of it, administrative problems have been discussed. It discusses the 7, as all the distinguished speakers have told, it discusses the 7 organs of Thin, the training of the Thin, his duties, responsibilities, the appointment, and much more important thing, and it is the most important book for the treatise on the statecraft. Arthashastra, we can say Arthashastra is not a book of political science, but it is a complete book which made conscious for which compiled all the important points and all the important ingredients of life, and it tells us about the modern period, and some part of it have been added later. That's all. That's for my presentation. Thank you.
So now, having heard Dr. Dipti's historical analysis of the Arthashastra, so beautifully narrated, starting from the time it came into existence, creator, its authenticity, and how it exists. Now we are into the last phase, and I welcome Dr. Saurabh, who will cover the aspect of the strategic leadership in the Arthashastra tradition.
Thank you, Chair. Lieutenant General Krishna, my panelists, esteemed panelists, dignitaries, and to USI and the Bihar Regimental Center to providing me this opportunity to present my viewpoints. At the outset, I would say that the panel is very well structured in the sense that the first and the second speakers have given you the conceptual background, the basics that is actually required to know what I am going to talk about, and also the debates associated with it, about the dating, about its veracity, and many other different kinds of questions raised against the text itself. Then comes this issue of leadership or strategic leadership in the Arthashastra tradition. When we talk about the text of the Arthashastra, this is just a text. And then comes the question of its dating. And then comes the question of its veracity. But my concern as a strategic analyst is thought figure. The ideas in the content that I read in the Arthashastra, and how those ideas could be useful for us. What is the utility of those ideas across times? Because a philosopher, a political scientist thinks differently than a historian or someone who is actually trying to problematize the text itself. I'm going to talk about not just the Arthashastra, but more than Arthashastra, in brief, in the sense that Arthashastra is a tradition, not just a text. Arthashastra means political science in ancient terminology. It's an ancient terminology for political science that we know as today, science of statecraft and governance, to say specifically. So, here, my point is, what do we try to understand and cull out of this tradition itself? And what are the important texts of the tradition? Because tradition has a number of reference points. Arthashastra is a theoretical text. It has a theoretical value, of course not historical value. And then we see that reading Arthashastra can only be useful and in a kind of important for us by contextualizing it with other texts, which has some anecdotes, which have some stories, like the text of the Mahabharata. And then come the text of Shukra Niti Sara, and then Niti Vakyamritam, and then come the fables of the Panchatantra. So this is a whole tradition that we are talking about, not just the text. And when we talk about a tradition, we actually talk about values which are continuously being transferred to us in the terms of the ideas that we are going to talk about, or specifically the idea of leadership that I am going to talk about here. There are several questions that come up, why we want to discuss the past and what is the past and its relevance to our lives. And why do we read tradition in Arthashastra tradition in a democracy? We in ancient times had monarchy. That's why it's important for us to understand what is history. History is something that is innate and inherent in us, that gives us the sense of ontology that we are embedded into, the sense of being that we actually are. It defines itself. That's why whatever be the past, whatever be the values of the past, we are the creations of past. We need to understand those past and the texts that are or that have been responsible for the transmission of those values and the ideas to us. And that's why I read, at least specifically, Arthashastra. It is said that it's full of misogyny, it's full of casteism, and of course, it is. There is no dispute in that. But the point here is, what is the ultimate content of human transcendental value that we are actually taking it from? The context of politics, the concept of society may change, context may change, but the values, the idea, the human behavior and the nature remain as it is for a very long time, until and unless we evolve to a different being. That is how this past is important to us. And when we do talk about strategic leadership, we are actually talking about a vision that the leader and the direction that the leader has to give to an organization, to a society, and also of implementing the strategies, cultivating organizational culture, mobilizing organizational resources, and then also building consensus among key stakeholders, whosoever are participating in the affairs of the day, the politics of the day, and the decision-making processes of the day. So key is here also the innovation that the leadership will be coming up with the changes in the environment and of the emerging threats and opportunities. And however, not last but not the least, how ethical the decision making is. What is the resilience and the ability to inspire others of the leadership in the context of adversity. When we are talking about key features of the Arthashastra tradition, we should know where it emanated from. And of course, Dr. Kajri and Dr. Tiwari both have talked about it, the context, the political, economic context in which the text was written. Of course, it was a societal upsurge at that point of time. When we look at 600 BCs, it's a time which is very critical for the formulation of ancient, medieval and modern India that we are at the moment. Why 600 BC? Brihaspati Sutra. 600 BC. And after that, I should say Buddha, Jain, Mahavir. There is a whole social movement, ongoing social movement. And of course, there's a huge dispute and debate between the traditions that are theist in nature and that are atheist in nature. Mahavir, Buddha, or Jainism and Buddhism is considered as to be Syatwadi or skeptical in their own content and approach to understand, and that's why more scientific in nature. And however, they had different conclusions about life, and they had got slightly pessimistic about the worldly life that we live in. So, how the content of the text of the Arthashastra and the Arthashastra tradition, as we take in Mahabharata and Chakrindesara, emerged. This is a kind of reaction to that pessimism of life that was coming up from Buddhism as well as Jainism, renunciation. This is a kind of a celebration of being, celebration of life that we talk in terms of the Arthashastra, and also the celebration of science. Because Arthashastra talks about rationalism, empiricism, and utilitarianism. It has a very different approach. It doesn't talk about God. It is an answer to, or is a kind of intellectual ferment, and this distinguishes itself by offering a positive alternative to pessimism and renunciation advocated by some of the other schools like Buddhism and Jainism. The Arthashastra teachers understood the societal changes of the time and advocated for strengthening these changes through the institution of the chain. And that's why we talk about the Rajamandala theory, we talk about the Saptanga Siddhanta of the state, etc. And therefore, it also challenges and questions the traditional morality and religion of the time. Now, why? Because there was another tradition of lokayatis, who we know as Charvakas. They were out and out materialist in nature, out and out scientific and skeptical in nature. And that's why and also Patrick Oliver, when we talk about, says that the text of the Arthashastra has been written over a period of time. Of course, there have been redactions of the text. Of course, there have been Brahmanical influences in the text over a period of time. But the core of the Arthashastra is coming up from the Lokayati philosophy. And at the moment in the text, there is hardcore Lokayati philosophy in the crux of the text and the tradition of the Arthashastra, almost 40%. And then thereby, of course, the derivation of the Lokayati philosophy, adaptations of the Lokayati philosophy in the Brahmanical later context. And therefore, the tradition of the Arthashastra, which of course informs Mahabharata as well, denies rebirth, karma, existence of God, and also the caste system. So what is the core? What is the core wisdom in Arthashastra tradition? This is Charvakas, the Lokayati philosophy. Only this world exists, there is no future life. Perception is the only source of knowledge. And what is not perceived does not exist, as perception is the only form of knowledge, matter, which alone is cognized by the senses, is only reality. The ultimate principle of the four elements, the ultimate principles are the four elements: earth, water, fire, and air. Not fifth. It doesn't talk about unseen. Consciousness is a material and transitory modification of these elements and will also disappear when these elements from which it is produced are dissolved. Simply speaking, our consciousness is a product of the physical and material reality that we are perceiving through our five senses, nothing more beyond that. Pleasure is the ultimate goal of life. That is the extreme materialist viewpoint that the core philosophy of the Arthashastra is having. However, there is a moderation. There is a moderation in the text of the Arthashastra that and that's why Charvakas did not become popular. What did become popular ultimately? The tradition of the Arthashastra slightly modified by inclusion of the unseen and the content and the introduction of moderation through yoga philosophy. Dr. Khatri talked about Anvikshiki. Yes, Anvikshiki is a kind of philosophical tool created by three subset philosophies, Sankhya, Yoga and Lokayat. Sankhya is atheist, based on inferential methodology. Yoga, I'll come to that later. Sankhya, Yoga and Lokayat. Lokayat, we have seen that extreme materialist. So materialism is opposed to Sankhya's inferential methodology, which actually deducts from the unseen. So these are two extreme ends which are brought together by the philosophy of yoga, and that is the system of understanding that Arthashastra tradition is having, and that's why it talks about moderation and kind of balance of life that we must look at, aspire at, and that is how this text and the tradition became very popular. Let's come to the leadership. This was a philosophical context in which we deduct these values or try to understand these values. When we talk about functions of leadership, these are setting direction, aligning people, motivating and inspiring others, empowering others, fostering relationships among different stakeholders, and also effective communication. I will just try to see how different texts of the Arthashastra tradition actually align with all these functions. Let's talk about setting direction, setting goals as per the purpose of the state. The right purpose and happiness of the people is Prajaranjan. The word actually has been used in Mahabharata. One of the important texts of the tradition of the Arthashastra, aligning the personal with the common goals at the individual level. See the importance of the tradition and the core of the tradition. It is talking about personal goals as well. It doesn't mean that if the goal is Prajaranjan, the king should align his happiness and interest with Prajaranjan. Because there are human needs as well. You cannot deny that. Human behavior as well. So, the ultimate goal is to align your ego with the superego that we are talking about, or the Paramatman, or the ultimate goal that we are talking about. Objectives informed and molded by righteous and just rationals. So, when we talk about any direction to the people, to the followers, those directives must be molded by righteous and just rationals, which people should accept. There comes the decision making, and there is a huge role of Anvikshiki, the science of inquiry, of philosophy, in decision making, and the modus operandi is counsel. It's not done in isolation, it's not done alone. People have to be brought together to discuss, to analyze, and to come on to a consensus to make a decision. And if not consensus, Kautilya says majority. Clear democratic principle within a group of people who are analyzing and deliberating on the issue. So what is the purpose of leadership in Arthashastra? That actually shapes different values that we have for leadership. And this is here, acquisition of things not possessed. Prithivya lave palanecha. The preservation of things possessed, augmentation of things preserved, and the bestowal of things augmented on a worthy recipient. The important and the catch is worthy recipient. You cannot give things to anybody just like that. He or she must be, or the taker must be worthy as well. So, two important things for decision making. Rulership can be successfully carried out only with the help of associates. One wheel alone does not turn, therefore he should appoint ministers and listen to their opinion. There have been discussions in the text, this should be done, that not should be done. Ultimate conclusion is no, you cannot go without counseling and appointing ministers. He should despise none, but should listen to the opinion of everyone. A wise man should make use of the sensible words of even a child. So information, insights wherever they are coming from must be taken in, and the king or the leader must be very receptive. Of course, these are the quotations from Bharata Shastra, but there are discussions and quotations in Shukraniti Sara as well, where it is said that self-critique is very important. And it is also said that it's not easy for the leadership to listen or hear of its criticism. Criticisms are not given on the face of leaders. So what methodology should a leader must adopt to know what is happening, what are his problems, or what are the critiques? So he says that two ways. One, look at the Shastra, what method they give, or what principles they actually elucidate to understand human behavior. You are also human, you will understand what you are doing actually. The second way is look at the public opinion. Investigate. There, nobody is going to tell you directly that these are the problems with you. So you must be proactively looking for your own criticisms as well to arrive at a decision, to arrive at a good perspective that you are supposed to, in fact, as a leader. So, motivation and inspiration is also important for leadership to motivate others. So, the leadership must be legitimate in three senses: traditional, rational, and charismatic. These are three parameters prescribed by Weber, who has studied a lot on legitimacy. And there are various means and ways of giving this legitimacy to the ruler and the leader in the Arthashastra tradition and the text also. So there are stipulations about the excellences of the king, the leader. He must be charismatic and trustworthy as well. When we talk about charisma, I'll come to that also in the next slide probably. The ideal of Rajarshi. This is something which is charismatic, this is legitimizing, and of course most of the leaders and the Indian Arthashastra tradition leaders aspire for. In Mahabharata, Ramayana, Kautali Arthashastra and Shukraniti Sara, all texts. Knowledge, discipline and the right attitude. I'll just read it. Three sciences have their root in just administration of the rod. Importance of force, use of coercive power. Administration of the rod when rooted in self-discipline, not just use of force or rod. It must be disciplined and by the self. Brings security and well-being to living beings. And if not used just and in a self-disciplined manner, it brings the largest and the biggest of the disasters. Discipline, also important for leadership, is twofold. It is acquired and also inborn. Training discipline suitable staff, not unsuited. So it's not like that you can train anyone. You can train only the suitable staff. And a science impart discipline to one whose intellect has qualities of the desire to learn. That is key. If you don't have desire to learn, nobody can teach you. So the leader must identify those people for training only who have the desire to learn. And of course, retention, thorough understanding, reflection, rejection of false views, and intentness on truth and not to any other person. So persons are not important. The idea and the truth is important. This is the ideal of Rajarshi that I was talking about. Therefore, by casting out the group of 6 enemies like lust, anger, etc., he should acquire control over senses, the leader, cultivate his intellect by association with elders, keep a watchful eye by means of spies to get information, bring about security and well-being by energetic activity, Rajas Gun. The simple translation of Rajas Gun is activity. If you're not active, you are, you can say, prone to Tamas Gun. So a king or the leader must always be active and energetic. Maintain the observance of their special duties by the subjects, by carrying out his own duties, acquire discipline by receiving instructions in the sciences, and when it is when the sciences are referred, we actually talk about Anvikshiki, the science of inquiry. Attain popularity by association with what is material advantage and maintain proper behavior by doing what is beneficial. Of course, there are deductions also, insertion of special duties which is not derived from the lokayati core of the Arthashastra tradition. This is a later insertion in the text itself. What are the duties of leader? Activity, rajas. Derivative of the rajas guna prakriti in Sankhya Yoga. Avoid Matsanyaya and Dandaniti with Dandaniti. Matsanyaya, of course, law of fish, where the stronger eats away the smaller, must be avoided using force by the king. Prajaranjan, we have talked about it, and also enforcing Varnashram Dharma, which is not at the core of Arthashastra tradition. It's a later insertion in the tradition itself. It's an innovation over with the changing context over a period of time. But what the ultimate duty is? To keep people happy, and that's why in the happiness of the subject lies the happiness of the king, and in what is beneficial to the subject, his own benefit. What is dear to himself is not beneficial to the king, but what is dear to the subjects is beneficial to him. Empowering others by delegation, one of the most important duties and practical duties of leadership. Because of simultaneity of undertakings, their manifoldness, and they are having to be carried out in many places, he should cause them to be carried out by ministers, perceived by him, so that there may be no loss of place and time. You cannot be omnipresent. So please delegate things to others, empower others to deal with the situation. And that is one of the important good quality of a leader. A leader who centralizes actually ruins everything. That is the understanding in the Kautilyan Arthashastra. Aligning with people and organization. Very good examples have been given in the Mahabharata text when the two sides are organizing for an imminent war. The Kauravas and Pandavas, the deliberation, the diplomacy that happens, and make alliances. So here we can see different kinds of leadership engaging. Duryodhana or Suyodhana also engaging with its own stakeholders and partners to ally with. But the important thing is that he is also a leader because he is also able to mobilize people. Yudhishthira and the Pandava party is also in the leadership position because they are also mobilizing people and formulating alliances. So to understand the tradition in its depth, we have to actually understand what Mahabharata and the alliance system in this and how they are actually formulating. Kautilyan alliances also we talked about. Kautilya talks about ally, how the alliances are formulated on both material and non-material basis. So another important duty comes with respect to the alignment of people, and this is from Shukraniti Sara, another text. There is no letter of alphabet which has no charm, there is no root of plants that possesses no medicinal properties. So also there is no man who is utterly unfit. You can put anyone in a position and he will do something or she will do something. But the rarity is the person who can connect with the job, with the designation, with the position that he or she is given. That is how Shukraniti Sara actually is talking about importance of putting right people at the right place with the right qualities. Otherwise, things could be done by anyone. Fostering relationship. Of course, we can see in the formulation of alliances and friends, mercy and charity are ultimate. Shukraniti Sara talks about these two qualities a lot. And come to that also, why and how. Human approach is the ultimate goal or the approach to be taken while solving conflicts and problems. Force is the last, as Dr. Kajri also talked about. Effective communication. What is said about this? Importance of right words and speech. Towards the slaves and servants, towards the wife and children, or towards the disciple, no one obeying in my command should be harsh and cruel in words. The king commands. Those who speak pleasant words and wish good deeds are praiseworthy and prosperous. In short, they are gods in human form. There is no such art of subjugation in the three words as mercy, friendship, charity, and sweet words. So the ultimate instruments of subjugation are something like soft power, like mercy, friendship, charity, and sweet words. That's why Shukraniti talks about a lot for fostering relationship. Shukraniti Sara says that if you have good friends, you have won a lot, or you can win over the world. So always be in an effort to acquire friendship through mercy, to many other strategies. There is a kind of interaction between Dharma Shastra and Artha Shastra. We should not isolate the two traditions. And of course, when we look into the details of the tradition, we see that the common people see it as different dharmas at different levels. The Artha Shastra and Dharma Shastra. Artha Shastra is represented by the understanding of Raja Dharma or the Abad Dharma. And Dharma Shastra is, of course, the traditional moral, religious or customary belief systems. So common people understand them as different. However, when we look from the true spirit of the Artha Shastra tradition, they are continuous matrix. They are in a continuous matrix of choices and priorities for order and sustenance in whole life. Why? Because at a point of time, Kautilya says that, not Kautilya but Niti Sara says that we should, or the leader should learn from the common people as well. It's not that people are fools. And even if you have to deal with the daily routine and affairs, common people are the guide to the leader rather than the Shastras itself. Because Shastra is at different level. And of course, you must resort to Shastra after a point when there are specific kinds of problems. Otherwise, customary law for stability is fine enough to deal with. That's why common people guide the leadership as well. When we talk about strategic leadership, Dr. Kajri Kamal has detailed all these 7 prakritis or organs of the state. But my point here is to say that if one has to be a good strategic leader, he or she should try to strengthen these elements of the state to acquire greater comprehensive national power, and that guidance is available there in the Artha Shastra tradition in a kind of a condensed manner in the text of Artha Shastra, but in a different manner and approaches in all other different texts of the tradition. And then there are instruments given in the sense that when we talk about strategy from the framework and the reference point of end, means and ways as well. So he has given the means and ways as well. Sandhi, making treaty of peace. Vigraha, policy of hostility or war. Asan, policy of remaining quiet, planning to march on an expedition. Yana, marching on an expedition. Sanshaya, seeking shelter with a stronger king or in a fort. And Dvaidibhava, Sandhi with one and Vigraha with another at the same time. So these are the different means and ways available to the strategic leader, and there are so many elaborated contexts given in the text. Where and how and in what combination you should apply these 6-folded policy and principles. Dr. Kajri has referred to the upayas. Danda is the ultimate fourth weapon, and this is an instruction to the leader that do not resort to the force first. And Shukraniti Sara says that do not be quick to perturb people. Do not be quick. It must be well deliberated and thoroughly thought about before you can think of perturbing anyone. So what are the motivations of leadership? Well-being of the people, personal excellence and laurels. Personal excellences and laurels, which actually are kind of an essential elements required for a human being. So this is the reality. You cannot dissociate from the personality of the king itself. So that is also the motivation for a good leader. Dharma with material well-being, good life, protection and preservation of the state. I'm not going into the details, I'm just going to refer to certain things. When we look at the Ram's leadership in Ramayana, it's more adherent to the rules and morals, but still not ignorant of the Artha Shastra tradition in the context of Valivad. He's always questioned. His moral standing is always questioned when he killed Bali. But that decision comes out of the tradition of the Arthashastra. Why? He was also very well trained in what is known as the Arthashastra or the science of politics. That is how you overcome a kind of a more powerful adversary or enemy, asymmetrical warfare. Rules change. Leadership in Mahabharata is more diverse and complex, and there are a number of different kinds and typologies of leaders. Yudhishthir, Dharma, Krishna, diplomacy, very shrewd diplomacy. Ultimate goal, again, Dharma. Arjuna, military leader. Bhishma, moral military leader. And of course, a kind of elderly, the symbol and beacon of experience. Karna, another kind of leader. And Duryodhan or Suyodhan, leader class apart, because he was able to mobilize people against the so-called or the righteous people like Pandavas. So these are the gem that we can look at in the Arthashastra tradition to understand leadership. We can also understand the text or the tradition in the contemporary context of democracy. There are values which we have just seen, they are relevant to the democratic context as well, like Praja Ranjan, like happiness of the people, and like association, like counseling, like the majority decision by majority. So many values are there in, to help us to utilize the insights that are there in the Arthashastra traditions as well. The inherent reality of strategy and war in relation to human motivations and aspiration has not changed. We have talked about it earlier. But the key here is leadership in tradition is about focus on sustainability of life. That is dharma. It's sustainable. How life should be sustainable. That's why the organization of state and the organization of kingship is, institution of kingship is, state and well-being of people. No personal glory, only achievement of goals. Both Arthashastra and and certain things that we could take from the Arthashastra tradition. Thanks for your kind attention. Thank you.
And shaping not only the ancient Indian government, but it is also shaping the model state craft. And I am very happy that the students who stayed back here, you have shown resilience and strength to continue with the day and remain very active. And as I told you that while we are talking about Chanakya, Kautilya, please believe that the same intellect you are also blessed with. And all of you who are here, students, just look back and see what is written. What is written behind? Piche dekho ek baar. So this is another thing, this is another quality that you are blessed with. So with the intellect that you are blessed with and these human qualities and the strength that you are blessed with, carve out your framework of your success in life and rule over this world. So finally, now having heard how the strategic leadership works and how it works in the modern context, I will request if you have any question to throw it to the speakers. Yeah, please, I'm very happy. And what about the students behind? Yes. जोर से
Good evening to all. I apologize and request you to please bear with my question because it may be a little bit long one. So there were two texts which were discussed extensively on the dais. One was the Dharma Shastra and the Niti Sar in association with the main text which was a part of the theme, the Arthashastra. So the Niti Sar draws heavily from the Arthashastra and the Dharma Shastra are also in relation with the Arthashastra as also discussed by respected sir. So I haven't read all the Dharma Shastras, but I have read Yagyaval Smriti and partially some of other parts of the Dharma Shastras, which also discuss about the realist and practical aspect of the policies and other regulations that are asserted in it, and not just confines itself to the categorical imperative or the moral good. So coming to my question, so considering their historical context, the historical context of these two texts and to what extent do the political strategies in the Arthashastra reflect the administrative challenges of early Indian kingdoms, and how do the other two texts address similar issues differently? Additionally, if any friction arises from these diverse approaches, what factors might lead rulers or scholars to favor one over the other, either entirely or as a composite?
Okay, so you're asking about the dichotomy between Arthashastra and Dharma Shastra.
So not exactly a dichotomy. So in the later part of the ancient India, we see that there are diverse texts, and the Arthashastra is in relation with these texts. So if we consider the historical context, so what I'm asking you, to what context do the political strategies in the Arthashastra reflect the administrative challenges of early Indian kingdoms, and how do the other two texts which are at hand address similar issues differently?
So there are issues, discussions of the issues of corruption, there is discussion of the issue of revenue, there are discussions about how to deal with different kinds of criminals. So when a text discusses about it, it's actually trying to address the challenges, administrative challenges that are there. So there are systems devised in the Arthashastra to deal with that. So it's actually reflecting the problems of the day that the text is trying to solve. This next part of the question is how important the text itself is, or how to prioritize one over the other, isn't it? So
not in its entirety, but sometimes we see that it is also the favor is given in a composite manner, like some part of one text, some part of one text. So what leads to those factors being accommodated while in the decision making for the same?
See, the priority is first try to resolve the issue by custom, as the ordinary people would agree to it. If there are problems, decide by the text of the Dharmashastras or the law that, of course, Dharmashastras were known as law. Even if the issue is not resolved, the king's edict or the decree of the king is ultimate and supreme. And decree of the king is ultimate and supreme because it is informed by science. And if the king is not issuing the decree as per the understanding of the science, this will also be illegitimate. Of course, that would be imposed by the force of the king, but over a period of time, the king will become illegitimate by exercising or by engaging in unscientific events and endeavors. So priority is science, ultimate. But there is pure hierarchy or a clear hierarchy of text which to be given priority over the other. First is custom.
And timeless application. Yeah. Somebody wanted to ask from that side.
Jain sir, good evening honorable dignitaries. I am Under Officer Shreya from 1st Bihar Girls Battalion MCC. Our professor don't touch the topic of international relation, Chanakya view. So my question is from chief of this panel. My question is, what is the Chanakya view on international relation? And India and other countries are used in contemporary world are using and taking the help of Chanakya Niti for formulating their contemporary international policies. If countries are using, then how? And or is any criticism of Chanakya policy? If yes, then what is the criticism?
Yeah, I think Dr. Kajari, this is pertaining to your talk.
This is addressed to me or to the chair? I thought you said the chair. Did you?
From the chairperson.
That's what. She's addressed it to you, sir.
No, I know that.
Okay.
But the topic that you have chosen, she has covered it.
Yes, ma'am, you can.
I'll take the question, except that I would perhaps take a 1.5-hour lecture to get the right answer to your question. I'll try and answer as crisply as I can. First of all, the interstate realm, I had 2 slides on the Rajamandala theory. I don't know if you followed that. But the way Kautilya perceives the interstate realm, which is, one, it's anarchic. There's a lack of a central authority, and therefore every state is doing self-help. And the only thing that differentiates one state from the other is distribution of power and capabilities, which is exactly the contemporary state system that we inhabit today. So in that sense, the interstate realm is quite the way conceived as it exists today. Having said that, the political end goal of foreign policy measure is Yoga Kshema, which is providing security and welfare to its citizens. And I think independent India post-1947 has been goal-oriented towards this, to achieve this in many ways. If you look at the 6 measures of foreign policy, which Dr. Mishra elaborated, so it begins with Samdhi, Vigrah, Asan, Dvedabhav, Samshray and Yana. Each one of these has been invoked by India in different strategic contexts. But most importantly, I'd like to highlight this aspect of strategic autonomy that we keep hearing about in terms of India's conduct of foreign policy. And a lot of people think that this proclivity to be strategically autonomous in the interstate realm may have a colonial background. I would like to trace this back to the Arthashastra. And why? Why does one need to be strategically autonomous? Because for Kautilya, Mitra reliance on an external ally is of the last resort, and that's why it's mentioned as number 7 of the Saptangas, which are the 7 measures or constituent elements of the state. Also, Kautilya says that between Samshraya, which is seeking shelter from a greater power, and Dveda Bhav, which is where you decide who you want to be at peace with and when do you want to fight a war, preference is given to Dveda Bhav rather than Samshraya, because with Samshraya, if you're seeking shelter with a power greater than you are making yourself vulnerable to be dictated by the terms you're seeking shelter from. There are several such examples which can prove that the fundamentals of independent India's foreign policy can actually be traced back to this treatise, the Arthashastra. I think we are still, evolving ways to understand the essentials of it and relate it to contemporary conduct of India's foreign policy.
Excellent. I'll just add here that from the state craft to corporate strategy to diplomacy, the Kautilya's principles today also echoes through the corridors of the powers of the world. That is why we should not ignore, we should not forget. It goes through the powers of the corridors of the world even today, Kautilya.
And sir, what is about criticism of Chanakya policy, if any there?
What is about the?
Criticism.
Criticism?
Yes, sir.
I didn't understand.
If any there.
No, I didn't follow.
Sir.
Which criticism?
See, general criticisms against Kautilya is that he is completely apathetic to morality. The general criticism. And he is kind of immoral in nature, which is the common understanding about Kautilya. But when you read the text, you come up with a nuanced understanding of international morality or personal morality. And you come up with a theory of moral relativity rather than calling it immoral altogether. So, states and the interstate relationships are dependent on the behavior of human being, human nature, which has nothing good or bad in its substance as such. However, you asked about just criticism. The largest criticism is about Kautilya is him being immoral in nature. Getting it?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Which I do not agree with. I have my own perspectives of it.
See, he advocated what? He advocated social welfare. And not only merely as an act of benevolence, but actually what he wanted to ensure was economic development, productivity, political stability, and of course the unwavering loyalty to the state. So all these things was ingrained in that. So many people may not agree, they may criticize it, but that is what is actually today all over in the governance.
See,
yes.
May I say?
Yeah.
See, Kautilya says this is the world and you have to deal with it. That's why he devises his own philosophy and the instruments of dealing with the reality of life, or the true and actual nature of life. People who come up with the criticisms of Kautilya are not looking at the reality in an holistic perspective, rather than they are looking at it from very partial, narrow perspective. That's why the criticism. Otherwise, I find Kautilya perfectly fine with his approach. Thank you.
I'm very happy that all of them are so alert and asking questions. Very nice.
Yes, sir, one last. Firstly, with the permission of Chair, if I would like to add to what the panelists said to the question that the student asked. I would say that firstly, there are two components of Kautilya. One is Chanakya Niti, which is basically a moral code of conduct, how a society should live, do's and don'ts. The second is Arthashastra, which is actually revolves around creation of wealth. And if you contextualize Arthashastras in today's world, we are talking about two very important things in international relations. One is comprehensive national power, and if you read Saptanga theory, it's nothing else but actually talking about comprehensive national power. The second element in the international relations today is strategic configuration of comprehensive national power. And in that, if you look at what that mandala theory was, right? How you looked at the world in concentric circles, and how with the ebb and flow of geopolitics, you should calibrate and recalibrate your relations with your neighbors and neighbors' neighbor. And the third thing, which is extremely important, are the means that you should employ. Today we talk about, persuasion, allurement, compellence, deterrence. Now he used that Sam, Dam, Dan, Bhet, which was used that, But there are aspects of Kautilya which are applicable today, and there are aspects which are not applicable today. You look at how contested the world politics, how uncertain the world politics has become today. For example, you look at neighborhood first policy, then obviously we're looking at developing friendly relations with our immediate neighbors. But if you look at from Pakistan and China perspective as a collusive hybrid threat, that Mandela's theory will very much be applicable. So there are elements of Mandela theory which are applicable, and there are others which need to be revisited, and that is true not only about Kautilya, but any other forms of theorizations that you make which have a relevance in the times, but it has to evolve and it has to be it has to be changed with the ebb and flow of times. Thank you. And one more thing, I just wanted to ask a question to the panelists. What was the USP of Taxila University vis-a-vis Nalanda?
Patna University.
All I know about Takshila was that it was one of the first universities which had an interdisciplinary approach to learning, and the tradition of intellectual dialogue that our civilization boasts of started from there. So people from different geographies would come with their ideas and discuss and debate them in a very healthy fashion to arrive at consensual outcomes. And I think that tradition was only carried forward in Nalanda. I don't think it was an aberration. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
Yeah. You want to say something?
Question. Sir, I have a question. Sir.
Yeah, ask.
Sir, my question is, I think this topic was touched upon by Kamal ma'am as well as Mishra sir. It is that in the Shanti Parva of Mahabharata, particularly chapter 107, we can observe that Bhishma advises Yudhishthir how to take care of the republics. And Bhishma wants the republics to preserve their administrative system, and he warns that the republics can be torn apart due to internal dissensions that may be sowed in by foreign enemies. And again, when we analyze Kautilya's Arthashastra, so there Kautilya is against the republics, and he is a proponent of monarchy. So he wants the ruler to destroy these republics and advises ways by which their unity can be destroyed. Sir, Mishra sir said that it all belong to the same Arthashastra tradition. So I would like to know what exactly changed the temperament regarding how to administer, how to deal with these republics.
See, Kautilya doesn't dislike republics. Look at chapter 14, if I'm correct, or 13. In book 13 or 14 in Arthashastra, it talks about oligarchies, precisely the republics. And Kautilya advises the chieftains or the leaders of the republic to behave in a democratic manner so that they can preserve themselves from the tyranny of the monarch. In that sense, Kautilya's Arthashastra is a truly and purely academic text advising even to the prototype democracies in those times. Getting it?
Yes, sir.
And why Bhishma is suggesting or advising Yudhishthira to preserve republics? Tradition and customs.
Yes, sir.
In those times when technology was not like that we are living in, administration centralized of the kind that we can do these days was impossible. So to build an empire, monarchy was advocated, but the local traditions and customs were preserved. Wherever people agreed to get incorporated into the monarchical system, fine. Otherwise, people who are proud of their republican culture or way of life, they were left on their own to administer themselves. However, they had to accept the suzerainty of the emperor. That was all.
Thank you, sir.
It was not destruction of way of life.
I must confess here something, that after I was told that I was requested that in case I would like to come here to chair a session. So immediately I got hold of a book on Kautilya's Arthashastra. And I read that book, the entire book. It's a lovely book. And you know what happened? That after reading the book I realized that Kautilya's principles, it remains a vital link between the ancient wisdom and the modern governance. If you read that book, you will realize that nothing has changed. We are still following the same pattern. So that is why we as Indians, we are all admirable.
Thank you, sir.
Any more question?
So, Jain and good evening, honorable dignities. I am Senior Under Officer Monica Kumari from 1st Bihar Girls Battalion, NCC. My question is, how does Chanakya concept of Raj Dharma intersect with modern ideas of moral leadership and accountability?
What is the question?
I think Dr. Mishra dealt with this issue for more than 20 minutes, exactly looking at what Rajadharma is, and he elaborated on 4 aspects of duties of kingship. One is maintenance of Varnashram Dharma, 2, that the ruler should be ever active, 3rd, that he should provide Praja Ranjan, which is making the people happy. And each of these actually corresponds with the training of the ruler, which is in Anvikshiki, Vedas, economics and political science. So the training regimen corroborates with the Rajadharma. Now, the core of Rajadharma is the sutra which Dr. Mishra read out in his concluding slides, that in the happiness of the subject lies the happiness of the king. And that is something which is germane to an independent India political leadership as well. I mean, if you were to read, so there's this scholar from the British IR committee called Adam Watson. He said it in the 1950s, that right from Kautilya's Arthashastra to the American Declaration of Independence, there is no text which puts the pursuit of happiness of the people quite so high. So in that sense, while the Arthashastra is talking about a monarchy, it did have a democratic principle in terms of bringing about the welfare and security of its people, which is something which the Constitution guarantees in an independent India as well.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much for the wonderful lectures. I haven't read the Arthashastra, but then I just have a curious question. I was just thinking, because you said that the book is mostly about the ruler, what kind of a ruler, what should a leader be like. I was thinking, does it mention anything about the citizen subject? What kind of citizen subject, if we can call them citizen subjects, what kind of citizen subject does the book envision? You mentioned Roti Kapda Makan to be the priority, but then is there an evolution of the citizenry in the book?
I'll take this and maybe others can add to it. See, the primary goal of this treatise is to maximize economic production, because that alone will lead to satisfaction of the people, which will lend legitimacy to the ruler, which is extremely important for his rod to be strengthened to both curb Matsya within the domestic realm and get more urban settlements outside, leading to an increased revenue, right? So that's a cycle that he has to maintain. Now, in order to do that, why does Kautilya think the ruler needs to know about the Vedas? Now, when we have said that he was talking about a heterogeneous social fabric, there was a challenge to Brahmanical orthodoxy. Why would Kautilya put Vedas as an important science for the king to be trained in? Because it had a utilitarian purpose. What was the utilitarian purpose? That because Vedas laid the groundwork for the Varna system, so people knew who they were, what they were supposed to do, there was no blurring of lines, the expectations were set, there was reconciliation, which led to a certain amount of social cohesion, and that social cohesion led to greater economic production. That was really what Kautilya was targeting. Now, the Varna Ashram Dharma, and the ruler is supposed to promote Varna Ashram Dharma, because each person should know that the one to which he belongs and to the stage to which he belongs, the Purusharthas, he should know what he should be doing. He should know his Swadharma, a term that came up in the previous session. And the moment they do that, they are contributing to the state, they're contributing to the economy. And that is what the vision of the subjects was 2,300 years ago. I don't know if that has helped you answer your question. But
Yeah. That's all. Anybody? Yeah.
Jai Hind all of you. I Cadet Gulshan Kumar from 1st Bihar Naval Unit. My question is, how does the Arthashastra discuss the concept of moral states versus a parametric state? Are moral considered importance of in governance?
We can, that matters. Clearly, all right. Understood?
yeah, take it. I'll take the question.
You take it.
So basically, for Kautilya, there is no difference between pursuing your interest and pursuing your value.
That's okay.
Why? If you've heard my lecture correctly, you would understand this question. So if Kautilya says that you need to increase your economic production, it is adding to your comprehensive national power, but you have to do it through the root of your Janpad, which is people and territory. So to increase your comprehensive national power, you have to willy-nilly invest in your people and territory, bringing the lot of them better. So your interest and values are concomitantly being pushed. Do you understand this? So it may seem like a dualistic understanding that it's rational at one end and ethical at the other. No, he blends the two. What is rational is also ethical. So when the External Affairs Minister says that we will pursue our interest, and people say that India has lost its moral high ground when we have not backed Ukraine invaded by Russia, I don't think that's correct, because in pursuing our interest, in making sure that people back home are getting oil at subsidized rates is also the value that India is pursuing. So our interest and values coming from the Arthashastra are not divergent, and therefore you can actually be moral and pragmatic at the same time.
Jai Hind everyone. I, Cadet Shambhavi Rani from 1st Bihar Girls Battalion NCC. My question is, what did Kautilya Arthashastra thought regarding management of the economy?
Management of economy. What did
Okay, there are three more raising hand, one more we'll take on. Acha, okay, ठीक.
Kautilya Arthashastra is a very wide concept, and it has told about the different attributes of the society and economy. You know, economy is a very important, and Kautilya have told very clearly that as is in dhan, arth, kam, moch, the four purusharth. And Kautilya said that dhan is very important because you know that Kautilya supported the centralized economy, centralized military, and for the centralization and for the greater empire, for making the greater empire, the economy should be very powerful. So total emphasis on the improvement of economy and its various components. Thank you.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, because of the time constraint, we have already crossed 6 in the evening. We were supposed to finish by 5:15. I can only say that I'm very happy that this has been the longest session, despite so many students having left. But all those who stayed back, they have taken so much of interest that they are still, overwhelmed with questions after questions. So this only speaks that what this session, that topic has covered, it has actually hit your mind very well, positively. Because today what we have explored the great land of Bihar and Chotta Nagpur plateau, as you call. This region has played a vital role in what? In shaping India's political and economic destiny, influenced by these ideas. So that is what we are taking forward. So with this, we end this session here. Thank you very much. And I'm very cheered up and happy that you people took so much of interest in this session that you have overwhelmed us with number of questions. Tomorrow, a very interesting topic is taking place. That is the chivalry and the sacrifices of the Biharis, done over 200 years. Now, I will request you all to take a lot of interest in that, and you can throw as many questions as you want tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I request Major General Jai Singh Bensla to the stage to felicitate our esteemed panelists. May I request our panelists and General Bensla for a group photograph, please? Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, with this we bring day one of our event to a close. We are deeply grateful for your enthusiastic participation and engagement. We look forward to welcoming you again tomorrow. Day two will commence at 10:00 hours. I repeat, we commence our first session at 10:00 hours. You are requested to be seated by 0930 hours. Thank you once again. Jai Hind.